Chapter 24, Irresistible. The female sound ninja leaned towards Toby. He's kinda cute in a strange sort of way. He still lay on the table while she stood in front of him. Toby moved, shifting around until he was sitting on the table, facing Tayuya with his legs under him. She leaned next to him, propping her arm on the table. She thought for a moment, before grinning and whipping out her flute. Toby titled his head, looking at the woman with curiosity. Tayuya put the flute up to her mouth and moved her fingers, pretending to play a few notes before again lowering the flute from her mouth. "If I play my flute a little for you," she purred with a sly smile, "will your snake jump out and dance for me?" "A snake? Where?" Toby looked all around, scratching his head in confusion. Tayuya let out an exasperated grunt at Toby's failure to catch her drift and for a moment considered wandering more around the Umbu compound to find a different guy to do it with. That is, until she snapped out of her thoughts and happened to glance over at Toby, who seemed to have found something very interesting on the floor next to the table. He was peering off the edge of the table at it. "A book?" Tayuya thought aloud, as she picked it up. "It's orange. Just like my face," Toby said with excitement. Tayuya stared strangely at the swirly orange masked ninja for a moment before opening the book and finding herself quickly engrossed with it. "Oh," she said, looking at one page before flipping to another. "Ah. Damn, that's hot," Tayuya mumbled to herself. "Oh, I gotta try that. What you're reading?" Toby asked with curiosity. A large grin spread over the kunoichi's face as she grasped his arm and pulled him from the table to where he would be standing in front of her. Toby scratched his head. "Wanna go in the back and fuck?" Tayuya asked casually. "Okay," Toby answered with his usual cheerfulness. As the sound kunoichi grasped his hand and led him away, Toby pondered to himself slowly, "I wonder what fuck means." A few moments after Toby and Tayuya disappeared off into the dark, a certain green beast minus the green outfit came strutting through the large room, completely nude. Apparently, the Umbu had given up trying to convince Guy to put on any sort of clothing that was not a one-piece, blindingly unstylish, green leotard and had decided, instead of locking him up, they may as well have a bit of fun with him. "Guy!" Several female voices sang from the other room, "Come back. We want to play the ring toss again." Guy smiled widely, turning on his heels. "Coming, ladies!" Guy called out in his most sexy voice. "The next morning, Hinata! Hinata!" A voice strained, calling out. "Hinata!" "Oh," the voice asked, "where are you?" "He told me I have to find her," Niji stated to himself as he walked aimlessly around the village looking for her. Where could she be? As he passed by the Inuzuka place, he couldn't help but hear the sounds emanating from the inside. "Oh, that tickles." Niji stopped in his tracks. That voice. The Hyuga glanced around the street to make sure no one was watching him as he stealthily approached one of the nearby windows, peering through. "Woof! Woof! Woof woof woof!" Niji fell backwards as a large dog appeared right in front of his face in the window, barking loudly. "Down, boy, it's all right. I'll let you out in a minute," a female voice soothed. "Kiba's sister," Niji whispered to himself. Hana. Niji's face popped back up in the window. "Naruto," Niji's eyes narrowed, thinking, "What are you doing here?" Naruto giggled as Hana carefully went over another of his whiskers with red ink. As he watched the scene, Niji's focus drifted from the brush softly moving across Naruto's face to Hana's breasts, which Niji suddenly noted were slowly bouncing with every movement of her. "Who's that in the window?" Niji's face turned red as he ducked down. She saw him. She saw him. Naruto blinked as the Inuzuka put down her brush and rushed outside to see what the deal was. Hana soon stood face to face with Niji. "Why were you staring through my window?" Niji thought quickly, "Was trying to see if you were home." "Why?" Hana asked the Hyuga curiously, "Do you want me for something?" "I want you for lots of things," Niji said dreamily before snapping out of it. Kiba sent me." "Yes, that's right, Kiba," he quickly corrected, trying to make up some excuse. "Oh, dear," Hana said with worry, "is something wrong with Akamaru? Does he need veterinary attention?" Niji said as he pondered if this lie was going to work. "I think that is what he said." "I better hurry," Hana exclaimed, gathering her vet equipment and saying a quick goodbye to Naruto. As she was about to rush away, "Wait, I'll come with you," Niji said, hoping to get some alone time with Kiba's sexy older sister. She smiled back, shaking her head before taking off into the distance. Niji frowned slightly. After a few moments, Naruto emerged from the house. "Hey, Niji!" Naruto grinned. Niji stared at Naruto strangely. Suddenly a thought crossed the Hyuga's mind as he glanced at the shorts Naruto was wearing. What? Naruto asked. Do you realize Hinata has your pants? Huh? Earlier that morning, Niji was sent to find Hinata. She was not in her room, but Niji couldn't help but notice a hastily thrown pair of orange pants in the corner of the room. Niji thought. Did you lose them or something? Yes. Hinata must have found them. Naruto jumped up and down with excitement. She's such a nice person. Naruto gushed with happiness, running off to find Hinata and hopefully get his clothes back. Niji followed close behind. The previous night Hinata breathed with excitement, dropping off Naruto's pants at her room, and taking one last look around before sneaking out and heading to the Uchiha's place. At the designated hour, Hinata tapped softly at the door of Sasuke's apartment. She waited. There was no reply, but the door creaked, swinging open slightly. It had been left unlocked. Curious as to who or what lay behind those walls, Hinata pushed the door open all the way and slipped inside. Elsewhere Tsunade got several hurried knocks at the door. Hokage-sama. Yes? We've just got an Umbu report about suspicious activity in the village. A strange sword was found lying in the street. A lookout thinks that up to 4 intruders may have entered the village. There has also been a sighting of a strange masked man. Tsunade got up from her desk. It may be a sound plot or it could be nothing. Just in case, alert the Sand Shinobi that are stationed here and the Umbu. Tell them to search for intruders and take appropriate action. If it turns out to be ninja from the Sound Village, don't hesitate to kill them. Yes, Hokage-sama. 10 a.m. Shikamaru sat just outside his home, the wind blowing lightly through his hair as he stared at his shogi board. Suddenly his senses detected footsteps approaching. By his calculations of the frequency and the lightness of the steps, female. Shikamaru stated flatly, not again. The footsteps paused. He felt a presence behind him. Shikamaru looked up. Huh? He said with some surprise. She waved at him. Hinata? Hi, she smiled sheepishly. I was just on my way to breakfast in HN, Shikamaru mumbled. What's wrong? Hinata asked. She thought he seemed somewhat distressed. Shikamaru paused. My parents were having really loud sex in the kitchen, so I had to get out of there kind of quick. Hinata paled. They are so troublesome, can't keep their hands to themselves. Hinata's eye twitched. At this rate, I'll have a dozen brothers and sisters. Hinata's sweat dropped. Not only that, but with Asuma presumably equally as busy elsewhere, I have no one to play shogi with me. Hinata felt a little sorry for Shikamaru's troubles, if you could call it that. Guess I could play with you. Do you know how? No, she said softly, twiddling her thumbs. Sit. Shikamaru said with a smirk, I'll teach you. There she is. Naruto said, poking Niji as he spotted Shikamaru and Hinata playing shogi. She was giggling. I wonder what they could be talking about. Niji stated aloud as they approached the two. Hinata! Naruto suddenly yelled, nearly blasting out Niji's eardrums. Hinata nearly swallowed the game piece she had been lazily running over her lips. Shikamaru couldn't help but stare at her. Hinata turned deep red as Naruto rushed over to her, squeezing her in a hug. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow at the red marks that covered half of Naruto's face. Oh! Hinata breathed as the wind was taken out of her. You've got my pants. You found them. I'm so happy. Naruto yelled, jiggling her. He was rocking her so much in the hug, it was making her eyes dizzy. Once Naruto took notice of Hinata's spinning eyes, he backed off, letting her take in a breath. Naruto grinned, scratching his blonde hair. You feel kinda squishy. Hee hee. Huh? Hinata peeped, the color beginning to return to her face. Oh Naruto, Hinata Niji suddenly interrupted. Hinata looked past Naruto and noticed Niji staring at something intently. She turned, and gasped. It was her father and her sister next to him, shaking her head. Her father did not look pleased. So, Ino Sakura began as she gulped down another helping of food. Yeah? Ino said, stuffing a few more noodles into her face. How long should we stay away from Sasuke? Ino grinned, long enough for the idea to soak into his male mind that we don't love him anymore. Huh. So in a few days, a week, we surprise him. Ino pumped a fist into the air. There was a pause as they went back to eating their breakfast. Sakura grinned slyly. Remember, I get to go first. Ino's smile drooped. What? I thought we agreed I get to go first. Ino, it was me. Sakura hopped up on her chair, pushing up her sleeve and brandishing her fist. Me! Ino grasped a kunai from her pocket. Sakura lowered her fists slightly as she noticed Ino's eyes suddenly move away from her. The pink-haired kunoichi looked over her shoulder to see an odd sight. Tenten was walking towards them, elbow locked with Rock Lee. The thing was the only thing Lee had on was a flowery pink pair of women's underwear. Ino and Sakura fell back in their seats and blinked simultaneously. Where have you two been? Ino asked incredulously, not totally sure if she wanted to hear the answer. Lee plopped down in the seat next to Sakura as Tenten took a seat next to Lee, a wide smile across her face. Sakura blinked as Lee suddenly cupped her hands with his own and stared into her eyes. Sakura mumbled. She couldn't help but ogle his rippling muscles. Sakura. Lee began, I would be honored if you would participate in some special one-on-one training with me. Ino raised an eyebrow. Tenten stared at Lee with displeasure. Lee, Tenten said slowly, but calmly, I thought I told you you're only supposed to do that special training with me, remember? Lee shook his head at Tenten and stuck a pose looking up into the sky. But it would not be in the spirit of youthfulness to not to share the glory of the experience with one as lovely as the fragile blooms of the lotus blossom. Lee said, looking into Sakura's eyes. Sakura couldn't help but blush. Ino shot Sakura a look like she was crazy. Tenten snorted, as Lee offered his hand to Sakura, which, against her better judgment, accepted. Ino frowned at this turn of events until she realized something. More for me. Sake, please. Jiraiya said as he took a seat in the bar next to a young beautiful woman with fiery hair. The woman didn't so much as glance at him. The Sannin thought the situation over for a moment before reaching into his pocket and pulling out his small book of pickup lines that had been ruined with red ink by a certain genin. Jiraiya turned to a page and reluctantly began to read the jumbled mess, resolving not to look at the woman's expression until he was either done reading or she had punched him out. If I said your youthfulness was a blossom, would you take off your lotus and accept my ninja way into your green beast and dance into the babbling brook until we erupted with sexy youthfulness? Jiraiya scrunched up his face as he finished the words, before putting on his most sexy gaze and turning his attention to the beautiful woman. He blinked. Apparently, during his speech she had left, and another woman had taken her seat. Hello, Sonny! A very, very old wrinkled woman. Jiraiya paled. What's that? She asked, putting a shaking hand up to her ear. You think I'm youthful and sexy, do ya? Jiraiya stuttered in horror. Don't be shy, boy. Let's get to it. Chapter 25, 7 Days. You're late. Hinata's father stated sternly. Oh? Or did you forget? Hinata, Niji turned to her. Your father sent me to find you this morning. I was supposed to escort you to the special clan gathering today and make sure you got there. Attendance for main branch members is required. Sorry. Hinata looked at her feet. Niji. You may stay here, I'll take her myself. Her father stated. Let's go, Hinata. Hanabi said, grabbing her arm. You don't want to miss the baby shower for all the pregnant Hyuga women in the Umbu now, do you? Shikamaru blinked as he, Naruto, and Niji watched Hinata leave. A few moments passed before something occurred to the blonde-haired genin. What about my pants? A little bit later that day, Tenten pouted, resting her head in her hands, her elbows propped on the table of the little outdoor restaurant where she and Lee had just come upon Ino and Sakura. Tenten sighed, while Ino looked quite pleased with herself, slurping down some sweet noodles. The raven-haired kunoichi glanced around, rather bored now, she thought, since her playmate Lee had run off with another woman. Her eyes narrowed and rested on Ino eating like there's no tomorrow. That's gonna go straight to your ass, you know that, right? Ino's eyes widened as she shot her fellow kunoichi a dirty look, but not before she swallowed her meal a little too quickly. When Ino took a breath in to say some witty comment back to Tenten, she began to choke. Tenten didn't even notice Ino's unusual silence, because just then, Niji happened to walk by. Spotting her teammate, Tenten immediately jumped from the seat and followed him, leading Ino to cough her head off. Niji! Tenten hollered. HM? Niji stopped, allowing her to catch up. Niji watched as his teammate paused in front of him, catching her breath. The Hyuga eyed her form carefully. Tenten looked up at him and grinned, hi. Niji crossed his arms, pretending to look up at the buildings and sky with interest. Lee's not around? Niji said in a low voice. Tenten's mind began to wander as she glanced at Niji's chest. Nope, she replied, perking up a bit. Maybe scrawny and pale isn't so bad after all, she thought. Want to spar? Niji began slowly. Just you and me? Tenten said, grinning playfully. Niji nodded with a smirk. Let's get going then. Shino was rounding the corner as he heard some odd commotion. He walked a few steps further to see a certain blonde kunoichi doubled over on the ground, choking and coughing loudly. Somebody help her, she's dying, were the panicked calls of a few bystanders. Shino paused, thinking for a moment before going into action. He rushed over to Ino, helping her up into a sitting position. Ino blinked at the stranger. Please help me. She thought, please help me, oh god no. Ino no Ino. Shino. Shino began releasing bugs from his body, and Ino began scooting away from him furiously. He had to grasp her arms and basically sit on top of her just long enough for the kindly bugs to do their work. A high-pitched squeal erupted that the entire village could hear the very moment that Shino's bugs dislodged the food from Ino's throat. And she didn't stop screaming until all of them were safely back into Shino's body. Shino watched Ino gasp for breath before her breathing slowed and she began to calm down slightly. Ino blinked and tried to get up, but Shino was still on top of her. Sorry, he quickly said, getting up. The blonde dusted herself off and stared at his eyes. It felt strange to actually see them. Then it hit her. Why you saved me? Ino said before turning her head slightly and sticking out her tongue, a shiver running through her. You seem very pale. Shino said plainly. I shall walk you home. Huh? But Ino watched as the bug-filled Jinin offered his arm to her. Ino mumbled in consideration, I guess I do feel a little dizzy. And so, Ino locked arms with Shino and let him take her home. The next day, day 2 Kabuto. An angry voice boomed throughout the dank lair. Yes, Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto answered, rushing to the Sannin's side. Where is Sasuke? The Sound Four are taking far too long. Orochimaru growled as blood dribbled from his bandaged arms down onto the bed where he lay. Perhaps they were intercepted, Kabuto pushed up his glasses, or they defected. Impossible. Orochimaru grunted angrily. Should I send out Kimimaro? H! Orochimaru yelled out in pain, do it. Kimimaro will be glad to hear it. Kabuto smirked, before heading to the room wherein was the 5th member of the Sound Four. Day 3 Tsunade re-read over the report that she had just been handed that morning. She glanced back at the words making sure she had not misread it. She then glanced up at those who had just brought her the report. In front of her stood 2 female Umbu, their faces unreadable behind their animal masks. But, Tsunade could clearly see them fidgeting in a somewhat nervous manner and staring at the ceiling as though it had suddenly become very interesting. Tsunade looked quite perplexed. Umbu! At attention! She suddenly addressed. Hokage-sama? They asked innocently. Is this true? Tsunade asked them, holding up the papers, it says here that you managed to find and kill 4 male sound ninja? Well, actually it was 3 except for this one guy that was actually a 2-in-1 and one of the Umbu began before she was cut off. But, why doesn't the report say how you killed them? The Hokage asked. The 2 Umbu paused and turned to look at each other before looking back at the Hokage. Well, we don't really know how they died, one began. They just sort of did. The other finished, both of them shrugging their shoulders. Tsunade stared at them, raising an eyebrow. At that moment, Shizen opened the door to Tsunade's office and walked in. Ah, Shizen. Do you have the autopsy report on the Sound Shinobi? Shizen blinked, yes, Hokage-sama. Well, Tsunade clapped her hands together in anticipation. What was the cause of death? Shizen paused for a second, staring at the 2 Umbu. Erotic asphyxiation. Tsunade slowly blinked, letting that sink in. Moving along, Tsunade said, quickly changing the line of discussion, it says that 2 unidentified persons escaped? Yes, Hokage-sama. One of the Umbu replied quickly, we found a woman with reddish hair and a man dressed in black with an orange mask. A woman with reddish hair and no clothes on according to this report. Tsunade said, rereading a paragraph or 2. Yes, she was completely naked. The Umbu continued. But we did find her clothes nearby which identified her as from the Sound. The other Umbu interjected. We don't know where the guy was from though. Tsunade tapped her fingers on the table and thought for a few moments. Gather together a few of yourselves into squads and go looking for the 2. Tsunade stated, it shouldn't be that hard to track down a stark naked woman on the run and a man in a neon orange mask. Day 4 either the Umbu had really slacked off, or Tayuya was really good at hiding because neither she nor Tobi had been found. Kakashi had not even stepped outside since Shizen had washed off his painted mask, but at the request of the Hokage he was asked to aid in the hunt for the intruders. The copy nin stood at the exit of the village, looking around to see if there were any signs that the unidentified shinobi had already left. Finding nothing, he prepared to summon his dogs. Kuchiyos no Jutsu! Kakashi yelled, putting his hand to the ground. A large puff of smoke appeared, but when it cleared Pakin, Kakashi exclaimed. His sweat dropped as he looked at the ninkin. Pakin was currently attached to another one of the dogs that happened to be a female. In fact, most of the dogs were very busy. There was much howling and gnashing of teeth going on. Kakashi crossed his arms, looking down on them. Don't make me use my wide array of water jutsu on you all, Kakashi said in a somewhat threatening manner. Sorry, Kakashi, Pakin groaned, but I'm a bit stuck. Can't you give us a moment, here? I suppose, Kakashi said, turning around and whipping out the new red Ika Ika book that he had picked up at the adult bookstore to read in order to pass the time. By the way, Kakashi, Pakin commented, what happened to your shirt? Mate, Shikamaru said plainly as he sat another piece on the shogi board. He waited, staring at the game for a few moments before standing up and moving to sitting across from where he was. HN. He mumbled in deep thought, analyzing the move he had just made against himself. A bunch of hurried footsteps interrupted his train of thought. Shikamaru looked over just in time to see a nude woman run past. He blinked, staring out in the same direction. Did I fall asleep? Shikamaru asked himself, poking at his cheek. Day 5 it was nightfall, and Kimimaro was making his way through the woods that were not that far off from Konoha itself. His face held a vacant expression that was vaguely displeased. He was very disappointed in the Sound 4 and their failure to show up on time with Sasuke. Suddenly, as Kimimaro walked down the path, a shadowy figure darted across the way ahead of him. With his quick reflexes he managed to jump in front of them, cutting the person off from the bushes. Kimimaro's eyes took in the curves of the figure halted a few feet in front of him highlighted by the moonlight. It was Tayuya. And she was still naked. The white-haired Sound Shinobi stared at her legs, before letting his eyes linger at her breasts, and then gazing into her aggressive eyes. Kimimaro paused. I'm afraid I'll have to bone you, he finally said. Tayuya blinked then replied slyly, really? Oh, Kimimaro said, pulling out one of his bones into a sharp spear, I think you misunderstand me, I'm going to kill you. She frowned. Well, shit. Day 6 Kakashi was walking around, waiting for his dogs to report back to him with any information when a small girl walked up to him and pointed at his face. The ugly! It burns! She wailed before running off. Kakashi scratched his head and thought. Does it really look that bad? Since he couldn't have his mask, couldn't have his face paint, couldn't and wouldn't want to get something as permanent as a tattoo, he did the only thing left to cover his face that he could think of. Over a week ago, he stopped shaving and just let the hair on his face grow and grow. Day 7 it was the end of the first week of the second month of Tsunade's 3-month plan. It was the end of an entire week of the male ninjas of Konoha being forced to run around without their shirts on. And it was time, once again for some major tests, and some major changes. But first, the Hokage had a scheduled appointment of a different kind to attend to. Tsunade looked up from her desk as the 3 Sand Shinobi filed into her office. Temari, Kankuro, Gaara, the Hokage addressed them, this letter was received today by Hawk from your village. Tsunade handed the scroll out, which was taken by Temari and unfurled. The blonde, San Kunoichi brought the message over to Gaara and Kankuro where they could read along with her. To Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro, this message is to inform you of some important decisions made by the council while you have been gone. 1. We have seen the plan that the Hokage has implemented to shore up our people's numbers and we applaud her great wisdom. 2. We think it's such a great idea that we have begun similar measures here at home. 3. Temari, we wish you pregnancy and many healthy children. 4. Gaara, Kankuro, please bring back some wives bursting with children. With this, we can help restore the Sand Village to its former glory. I wish you 3 luck. Baki. After the Sand siblings had left befuddled looks upon their faces, Shizen walked in. Shizen! Tsunade called out to her assistant, how goes the testing this morning? Well, Hokage-sama, Shizen began, reading over the report. Once again, we've got several medical nens from the Hyuga clan checking over each woman to see if they're with child. Do we have any percentages yet? Tsunade asked with great interest. Shizen showed off a nervous smile, 20%. Only 20? The Hokage exclaimed. Well, not everyone's reported and yet at least it's better than 3%. Tsunade's side. Call a meeting. All the nin male and female. In my office. Now. About an hour later, all the Konoha shinobi found themselves squished all together in the Hokage's office. Many of them had not seen each other in quite a while. Kakashi was getting some odd stares, but not as many as guys. Somebody had finally managed to get him into some clothing, though unfortunately it was a thong. Asuma and Kurenai were locked arm in arm. Hinata was carefully watching Naruto. Sasuke was mysteriously absent. Niji's hair somehow got filled with beads and other trinkets once again. Iruka was looking worse for wear. He lost his hair tie, among other things, and now his locks fell all around his face. Anko smiled at him, winking she knew where he was now. Shikamaru was relating the tale of the nude woman he saw in a dream to Chuji. Chuji nearly dropped his chips. And Sakura looked at Lee a little more fondly. "You know the drill by now," Tsunade announced. "I'm sure you girls haven't forgotten. For the men who weren't told, for the sake of surprise starting tomorrow, no woman can wear modest clothing. You girls get a choice between a covering of completely see-through fishnet, bikini tops and bottoms, or even just going about your business in your underpants. Your choice." There was a rise of excited voices among the men, but even that was eclipsed by none other than Jiraiya's loud whistling. "Take it off!" Jiraiya yelled at Tsunade. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. "What about you, Hokage-sama?" Aoba asked. Tsunade laughed. "All ladies over 50 are exempt. Nobody wants to see that." "I do!" Jiraiya pouted. Tsunade shot Jiraiya a dirty look for a moment. "Moving along," she said, "since this process isn't going as fast as I'd like, I'm also adding a few bonus measures, I guess you could call them." There were some nervous gulps among the nin in the audience. "First off, let me remind you that just because the week is over, it doesn't mean that the men get to put their shirts back on. That is still in effect," Tsunade began. "Secondly, the wall in the bathhouse separating the men and women's sections will be taken down." "Yay!" Jiraiya squealed. "And, finally, free sake will be available every night this week, plus I'm temporarily stripping away the drinking age. Now any shinobi or kunoichi, genin or above that is able to present their leaf headband at the bars may have as much alcohol as they can drink." "YOSH!" Lee exclaimed in excitement, thrusting his fists into the air. Who? Alcohol!" Kiba yelled, elbowing the nearby Shino with excitement. Shino remained emotionless. Guy, Niji, and Tenten simultaneously gulped as they watched Lee bounce around. This wouldn't end well. Chapter 26, Akatsuki Interlude. "Do you ever think he's coming back?" Itachi blinked, looking up and behind him from the couch he was currently sitting on. He stared at Kisame, who was draping his arms over the back of the couch to the right of the Uchiha. "What, Kisame?" Itachi asked blandly. "Do you ever think he's coming back?" The fishy man repeated. "Who?" "That weird guy, you know, the one that said he would go to Konoha and get my sword." Kisame grumbled, "It's been a whole week." Itachi was silent with disinterest. "Are you even listening?" Kisame prodded. The Uchiha narrowed his eyes. "I am trying to read a book, Kisame." "Oh," Kisame said, finally noticing the book in his Akatsuki partner's lap. "What is it?" Itachi shifted toward Kisame and held up the book where he could see it better. "Zetsu found it in the woods yesterday," Itachi said, showing Kisame the cover. "It's called Ika Ika Paradise." Flashback, 2 nights ago. Tayuya stared at Kimimaro as he readied the sharp spear-like bone, taking a step toward her. She jumped back, offering up the only object she had with her as a weapon, a small orange book. "Why the hell was this the only thing I managed to hold on to?" Tayuya cursed to herself. "I could have picked something better." At that, the sound Kunoichi hurled the book at Kimimaro's head, which hit him square on the forehead, making a sound smack before falling to the ground with a light thud. Kimimaro blinked, surprised at his failure to dodge the object. "Heh," Tayuya smirked. "Perhaps he is distracted by my body after all," she said, taking advantage of Kimimaro's moment of disorientation to make her escape. Kimimaro shook his head. "Must focus." He watched as Tayuya ran from him in a direction directly opposite from Konoha. As he was about to make haste and go after her, she yelled back. "If you chase after me, you'll waste Orochimaru's precious time. You should go find Sasuke while he is still in the village." End flashback. So Itachi, no. "We are not going back to Konoha to get your sword." "Hey, I hear we are about to get a message from the leader, yeah?" Deidara suddenly announced as he and Sasori entered the room. Itachi commented. Right on cue, the shady, shadowy projection of the Akatsuki leader appeared in the room. In a deep, mysterious voice the leader spoke. "I have news of a grand opportunity that must not be wasted. Itachi, Kisame, listen up, I have a mission for you. The Nine Tails is once again within our grasp. Konoha's defenses are currently low, and their shinobi, sexually distracted. Sexually? Deidara asked inquisitively, making an odd face. Sasori raised an eyebrow as the message filled them in on the odd happenings in Konoha. And so now, Kisame, Itachi, the message continued, you must go to Konoha and attempt to capture the fox. For this mission, you will need to blend and do not wear your cloaks or forehead protectors for this. According to our sources, the men must go topless. At that, Kisame made a face of utter disgust. Deidara smirked at Kisame's expression, amused at his discomfort. Huh, the blonde laughed, Haiden should have been sent on this mission. He likes to run around half naked. Good hunting. The leader finished. After the message ended, Kisame sat down on the couch next to Itachi, and Sasori got up and left to go play with his puppets. We're going to Konoha! Kisame exclaimed to Itachi. Oof, Itachi replied. Why don't I get to go on the fun mission? Yeah, Deidara mused. Just think of all the kunoichi, yeah, all the sex. Kisame blinked before forming a wide grin. You don't need any sex, Deidara. The blue man said, you get plenty. What, with those mouths in your hands and all? Deidara narrowed his eye at Kisame. The blonde crossed his arms. What are you insinuating? I'm insinuating, Deidara, that you like to lock yourself in your room at night and Kisame. Itachi interrupted. Kisame blinked. I do not wish to hear any of your theories on the sexual practices of other Akatsuki members. Itachi said sternly to the shark man. Sorry, Itachi. Let's go prepare for the mission. Itachi said, rising from his seat. As Kisame headed outside, Itachi walked over to Deidara. What, Deidara asked curtly. Here, the Uchiha said, handing the blonde a book, you may hold on to this until I get back. HN? Deidara questioned, flipping through the book. Deidara hummed with growing interest as he came across some very interesting illustrations. Now that is some great art. Tayuya ran through the woods for 2 days straight. She figured she was getting close to the outskirts of another village or town, but she did not realize how close she was. She suddenly came upon a clearing. It was a vast open hot spring. Warm steam rose up from the water, tickling her bare skin. Not immediately seeing anyone, she noticed a piece of clothing hanging from a nearby tree. Feeling very cold from her state of undress, she picked up the large flowing cloak to examine it. It was black. Are those red roses on the side? No, they're clouds, she said to herself. Hearing a sudden splash, she turned the cloak only halfway on one shoulder. The hell? Came the angry voice of a man who had just jumped out from the water to see Tayuya with his clothes. Shit! Tayuya cursed at being caught. Fuck! The white-haired man said in a surprised, yet almost pleased manner, when he noticed that the woman stealing his cloak was quite naked. Damn! Tayuya said, staring at this hot nude man's assets. There was a long silence as Tayuya and Haiden took in the view. Then, Haiden smirked, pulling a grinning Tayuya into the hot spring she, nearly jumping on him while simultaneously tossing the cloak back onto the tree. I'll have to sacrifice 100 heathens to Jash and Sama after this, Haiden thought as he pressed his mouth onto her soft lips. Several hours later, Haiden thought he heard his Akatsuki partner Kakuzu yelling his name through the countryside, wondering where his stupid ass was. This stupid ass, Haiden thought, was having far too much fun to bother answering him. How much farther is it? Sasuke said, turning his head to look back at his home that was quickly disappearing off into the distance as trees and leaves zoomed past him. Be silent, Kimimaro stated, tightening his grasp around Sasuke's legs. The Uchiha grunted, crossing his arms. He really wished this guy had not fetched him so quickly. So many women to impregnate, so little time now there wasn't any more time. Sasuke started at the back of the Sound Nin's head. Is it really necessary that I ride on your back? Yes. Why? Because it is faster this way. Sasuke snorted, shooting Kimimaro a skeptical look. The Uchiha opened his mouth to say something else when suddenly he was thrown forward and into the air as Kimimaro unexpectedly hit the ground. After a few moments, Sasuke managed to pull his face up and out of the dirt. What the hell? Sasuke exclaimed in confusion as he went over and bent down to examine the unmoving and very dead body of the Sound Ninja, a shinobi who fortunately or unfortunately for Sasuke, had been suffering from a terminal illness. The Uchiha slowly stood up to observe his surroundings. Trees, and oh, what a surprise, even more trees. Sasuke could not longer see the Leaf Village, and he certainly did not see the Sound Village anywhere. He was effectively in the middle of nowhere. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched as he stared down at Kimimaro. Why did you have to go and crap out on me like that? Kisame stood outside waiting for Itachi. As per the leader's orders, he left his cloak and head thingy and was currently wearing only a pair of dark pants. Itachi finally walked up in a similar state of undress. Ready to go? Kisame asked. Itachi blinked and stared at Kisame's chest. Kisame raised an eyebrow. What is it? We are meant to be inconspicuous. Itachi stated flatly. Kisame blinked. You are blue. Kisame glanced down at himself. Oh. What should I do? The blue man asked. Itachi thought for a moment. Use the transformation technique. Disguise yourself. Kisame nodded, making some hand signs, Henge no Jutsu. Poof! Itachi blinked as the smoke cleared, revealing Deidara. Itachi stated in mild surprise, as he stared at Kisame's now long, blonde hair and slimmer, no longer blue body. Why did you henge into Deidara? Itachi questioned. Kisame/Deidara shrugged his shoulders. He's a guy. Itachi stared at his Akatsuki partner. Barely. Meanwhile, Tsunade had just finished her talk with all the male and female shinobi of Konoha and was about to dismiss them when suddenly... Hey, who's that? A random jounin pointed out. From the very back of the room, hidden among the crowd, stood a strange, fully clothed man wearing an orange, swirly mask. Hello! Toby waved happily. Apparently, when the message was broadcast throughout the entire village for all shinobi in the area to come to the meeting, Toby had thought he was supposed to come as well. Get I am. Ordered several jounin. Toby is a good boy. He said, oblivious as he was dragged away by several ninja. Hello? Hello! Sasuke called out, walking deeper into the woods. Hello! He yelled again. The Uchiha paused for a moment before picking a direction and running for several more yards. Orochimaru! Sasuke screamed, hoping that he would just randomly stumble upon the Sound Village. After a few more hours of finding nothing, Sasuke scowled and plopped down on the ground. The Jinnin leaned back and glanced around. I don't suppose there are any women around here. Sasuke sighed. Chapter 27, Happy Hour. Sasuke stood up, puffing out his bare chest, a leg up on the corner of the extra-large bed and his hair blowing softly in the breeze coming from the open window to the side of him. Come one, come all, Lady Sasuke smirked, a long large-size forehead protector covering his privates, and form an orderly line. It's the Revive the Uchiha Clan orgy. We! Yay! Woohoo! Were the excited murmurs of the blonde, the dirty blonde, the pink hair, and the two dark-haired buxom beauties in the corner of the room, getting ready to strip off their tiny black negligées. As Sasuke's wet lips drifted closer and closer to that of the first bouncing babe, a shadowy figure appeared in the window. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Sasuke. Sasuke whipped his head around behind him, eyes widening. Itachi? The Akatsuki's robe fluttered in the wind in a dramatic pose, one hand holding onto the side of the window and one foot inside the room. Suddenly, Itachi's oversized kunai thrust forth from the sleeve of his cloak, its perfectly sharpened point glistening in the moonlight. The elder Uchiha jumped toward Sasuke, brandishing the kunai in front of him. It's neutering time, Itachi grinned evilly. Sasuke's mouth wobbled helplessly as Itachi pushed him to the wall and coldly undid the bandana around his little brother's waist, the metal of the leaf symbol making a plank as it fell to the floor in slow motion. Itachi swung the blade, blobs of red spritzing into the air as it connected with Sasuke. Sasuke screamed, bolting up to find himself sitting under a tree. The Uchiha gasped for breath, grasping his chest and glancing at the empty forest around him. It was just a dream, Sasuke said croakily, groping himself to make sure he was still all there. Just as Sasuke was about to breathe a sigh of relief, he nearly screamed again when a figure suddenly jumped from nowhere right at his feet. So the figure said with a grin, adjusting his glasses, "There you are." Sasuke blinked. Kabuto. Well, despite the interruption, Tsunade announced, "You are all dismissed." With that, everyone made their way to the exit. Naruto? Oh, hey, Hinata. Naruto grinned, putting his arms behind his head in a stretch. I brought your my pants. Naruto said excitedly, noticing the orange bundle she clutched to her chest. Sorry I didn't get them to you sooner. Hinata looked off to the side, blushing. My father wouldn't let me out of his sight this week. Naruto blinked. I washed them for you. Hinata offered, handing the pants out towards him. Wow, thanks. It was getting to be that time of year. Naruto laughed. You mean you haven't? Hinata blinked, still holding the orange pants, not for a whole hee-hee. Suddenly Hinata was overcome with a strong urge. What's that over there? Hinata pointed. Wah! While Naruto was not looking, Hinata spun around and immediately pressed her face into the pants, taking the opportunity to breathe in deeply the smell of her sweet Naruto one last time before she was parted from the orange garment. When she finally looked back up, the scatterbrain had run over to chat with Sakura, though technically it was her fault for happening to point in that direction anyway. Hey, Sakura! Naruto exclaimed, long time no see. The pink-haired Kunoichi glared at him skeptically. What do you want, Naruto? Naruto scrunched up his face and thought, you? Naruto! Sakura threatened in a raised voice. Naruto laughed nervously and backed away. Sakura sighed. Naruto, she began in a slightly more pleasant tone. Have you seen Sasuke around? Sakura asked, clasping her hands together, hoping that Naruto had seen him somewhere. No. Naruto was surprised by the question. He had not seen or thought about Sasuke in a long while. On the way out, Naruto picked up his pants from Hinata and thanked her with a hug. Hinata vowed to never wash herself again. And as they all left, there were a few scattered elated cries declaring, party at the tavern tomorrow night. A couple hours later, Shizen, send in the next one, yes, Hokage-sama. Tsunade sighed as one woman left and another came into her office in Umbu this time. She was having some preliminary meetings with the various kunoichi of the village who had recently found out they were with child, just to fill out paperwork and to simply try to keep track of everyone. Hello, how are you today? Tsunade began, scribbling lightly at a piece of paper. Fine, fine. Today we are just going to be filling out some simple information, the Hokage said with a smile, like your name, and who the father of your child is. The Umbu interrupted, a bead of sweat pouring down her face. Yes? I don't know who the father is, she smiled nervously. Exactly. Tsunade blinked. Okay, the Hokage continued. Could you narrow it down a bit? Maybe even a list of names would be. I didn't know all of their names, the Umbu replied before saying with some enthusiasm, I could tell you their different hair colors, though. Tsunade sighed heavily. But, by the end of the day and 57 Umbu women later, Tsunade was about ready to pound her head into the desk. How could none of them, Shizen, not one of them, the Hokage exclaimed, have any clue who the father of their babies are? I don't know, ma'am, some gave me a list of names, but still you did encourage somewhat of a mating frenzy, Hokage-sama. But I did not encourage an orgy. Tsunade yelled. I specifically said no orgies, and do you know why? Because everyone would have so much sex that no one would have any clue who the father of their baby is, or what clan he's from. Think of the probable clan disputes, Shizen, the utter chaos. It could take years to sort this all out. This is what I wanted to avoid. At least I can count on you, Shizen. Tsunade sighed, surely you know the father of your own child. Well, actually, Shizen fidgeted slightly. Oh, Shizen, not you too. Tobi's a good boy. We can't seem to find anything on him, one Jounin whispered. No weapons, nothing to indicate his village of origin. The other Jounin eyed the orange-masked ninja skeptically. Are we sure that's one of the intruders that the Umbu reported seeing? Yup, that's him all right, Pakin reported with a sniff. He's the same smell that we had been trailing. So what do we do with him, then? Kakashi pondered aloud. The other Jounin glanced back at Tobi, who was humming happily, dangling his legs from the table that he was currently seated upon. Doesn't seem very threatening, does he? Nope. Not really. Kakashi began taking several steps towards their prisoner. But that still doesn't excuse his intrusion. The others watched as Kakashi grabbed Tobi from behind his neck and slung the man over his shoulder. Tobi exclaimed like he was going for a ride. I know just what to do, Kakashi said to the other two Jounin. I'll take care of it. OMPH! Tobi cried out as he was hurled several feet outside of Konoha's main gates, but connecting heavily with the ground. Tobi looked back at Kakashi, who was waving from just inside the entrance. Bye-bye. But Tobi's a good boy, Tobi said, standing up. You know, Kakashi said, rubbing his chin, you seem oddly familiar for some reason. Tobi's a good boy. Tobi began again before suddenly pausing. No wait, Tobi's a naughty boy. Tayuya said Tobi's a naughty boy. Uh-huh. Kakashi said, raising an eyebrow. Tobi scratched his head. Go on, then. The Kopinin called out, leave and don't come back. You're lucky we don't lock you up forever or something. Yay! Tobi exclaimed, running off to who knows where, probably to find and annoy the hell out of Zetsu some more. It was nightfall before Sasuke and Kabuto finally arrived at Orochimaru's place. Sasuke, Orochimaru hissed, glad you could finally join us. Let's skip the pleasantries and get straight to the part where you train me and I get loads of power. Sasuke demanded. In time, Sasuke. Orochimaru replied, gesturing for Sasuke to go down the hall. Kabuto, Orochimaru said with displeasure, you were too slow, I had to switch to another body before Sasuke could get here. I apologize for the wait, Orochimaru-sama. Here, Sasuke, Kabuto pointed, this room here. As the three entered, Sasuke noticed several empty jail-like cells along the wall. The one on the very end had a single occupant. Oh my, he's even more beautiful than I imagined. Sasuke blinked, turning his head to look at the source of the voice. The person inside had the most horrific shade of hot pink/neon reddish hair that he had ever seen. What is that? Sasuke asked, turning to Orochimaru. Oh, that's Karen, Orochimaru replied as Karen adjusted her black-rimmed glasses. Sasuke. I love you, she said, grasping the bars tightly. The Uchiha took a few steps back. What's the meaning of this? Orochimaru cleared his throat and began, well, you see Sasuke, our time training together is going to be very rigorous. Sasuke nodded. What am I to do if you were to damage or lose your eyes? Orochimaru continued, your bloodline would be lost to me forever. Therefore, before we train, I must take precautions in case you have a little accident. The Uchiha blinked, so who is she? Your breeding partner. Sasuke twitched. I want your babies, Sasuke. Karen squealed. That night, many of the kunoichi of Konoha contemplated their wardrobe for the morrow. What did they have, what would they chose, and what did they look best in? Oh, what things would the morning bring? Standing in the exact spot where Toby found himself standing hours earlier stood two half-naked men in the glowing light of the sunny morning, staring at the gates of Konoha. Itachi, are you sure you don't need a disguise? Kisame asked, casually blowing at the blonde locks of hair that covered his current handsome face, the face of Deidara. Kisame, Itachi said plainly, walking with his Akatsuki partner towards the gate, if anyone recognizes me I will simply trap them in an illusion before they can draw any unwanted attention. Oh yeah, Kisame replied, a gust of air blowing his yellow hair all around. Itachi blinked slowly, I think we should split up for a short time in order to survey the situation. Don't draw unnecessary attention to yourself. And with that, the Uchiha picked a direction and walked off. Moments after splitting from Kisame, Itachi began to notice a large number of women were walking around the village without Mukon. Itachi blinked as another kunoichi walked past him. The Uchiha unconsciously watched with his fiery red eyes. It made all the women look like they were moving in slow motion. What is this feeling? He asked himself, as her breasts slowly bounced with her walk contained only within a thin strap of material. Her nipples looked like they could burst forth at any moment. Itachi felt himself observing all of this woman's curves and crevasses, let loose on the world to see with only a tiny bikini bottom hiding all the interesting bits. What is this feeling? Again with the questions. And another one of them was heading right for him. This one creatively wearing her headband around her boobs, a boob protector, I guess you could call it. Itachi noticed she wasn't wearing any real pants, just a skirt of fishnet material which didn't leave much to the imagination. They shot him a few shy glances, wily looks, playful grins, and sly smiles. He could feel their eyes on his body, while he stared at the one standing just over there, the one with the shapely legs. This foreign urge. That can't possibly count as a shirt, can it? That Itachi blinked. The woman sitting over there at that restaurant, her shirt was just a piece of fishnet, and Itachi could see everything, every little detail of her curved, soft. This foreign urge. I feel the need to. Kisame Deidara peered down a relatively shady alleyway down back behind some various buildings not far from where he had remembered dropping Samahata, his sword. Where could it be? He pondered. Kisame's train of thought was interrupted when a figure suddenly dropped down from the roof above him right down in front of him. Hello! The guy said with an oddly creepy smile, my name is Sai. Want to see my picture book? Kisame blinked, a look of utter confusion upon his face. What the? Want to see my picture book? Sai repeated, holding out some sort of book. No. Kisame Deidara replied, crossing his arms. Sai blinked, leaning closer as though scrutinizing Kisame. Are you a woman? He suddenly asked. No. Kisame said with a snort of laughter. Are you sure? Sai prodded, pointing at Deidara's curly hair. Yes. Kisame said with frustration. Can I see your penis? No. Kisame exclaimed. Want to see mine? No. Kisame grumbled. He was glad to get away from that weirdo. As he left the alleyway, he nearly ran into someone walking in another direction. Hey! Watch where you Ino suddenly stopped yelling as her eyes met that of what looked like a dashing young blonde man whose hairdo made him a near-splitting image of herself. Oh wow, Ino said in awe, intoxicated by his beauty. It's almost like looking in a mirror, huh? Kisame thought, this blonde chick kind of reminds me of Deidara. Ino's eyes began to glisten all over as she swooned dreamily. At this rate she was going to end up forgetting all about poor old Sasuke. Kisame nearly fell over backwards when she suddenly and unexpectedly shoved her face mere inches away from his. Kisame glanced down at her, vaguely noting that she was scantily clad and he could see down her cleavage from where she was standing. While he was slightly distracted, Ino took a chance and made a bold move. She grabbed his shoulders and kissed the mysterious stranger, the image of Deidara that she had become infatuated with at first sight. It was an understatement to say that Ino was shocked when the man poofed into a cloud of smoke as her lips connected with his, even more so for when the smoke cleared. There was a scream heard around the village. Oops! Kisame mumbled as the blonde took off running. He was his blue self again. Kisame! Kisame looked up as Itachi jumped down beside him. The Uchiha glared at his Akatsuki partner. What happened? It's not that big of a deal, Kisame said. It's no. Kisame stopped abruptly as he noticed Itachi's face. What's that? The blue man asked, blinking. Itachi had several red and pink marks on his face that were distinctly lip-shaped. Kisame began. Is that him? A loud feminine voice suddenly called out towards the two Akatsuki. Itachi stood his ground, while instructing Kisame to duck into another alleyway. The Uchiha watched as the blonde and pink-haired Kunoichi approached him. He was right here! Ino exclaimed to Sakura, he was right here. I believe you, but Sakura paused, gaping at the dark-haired man. Sasuke? Itachi glared at them with red eyes. More like a giant Sasuke. Ino said, eyeing the man thoughtfully. A giant, dare I say, sexier Sasuke? Sakura began as the two approached, filled with curiosity. Itachi narrowed his eyes at them with disinterest. After all the huge-breasted women he had seen that day, even with their tiny, tight outfits, these two were nothing. And he quickly tired of their happy squealing. Mangekyo Sharingan! Itachi yelled at them, activating his eyes. After a few minutes, Kisame popped his head out from where he had been hiding to find a rather odd sight. The blonde and the pink-haired girl were collapsed on the ground with their eyes closed, drooling. Kisame blinked. What did you show them? Itachi paused before replying. The most horrifying illusion I could think up for them, Sasuke participating in various sexual acts with other men. Deidara Zetsu Sasoryu. Kisame cringed, and looked over at the two sleeping Kunoichi. But then why are they smiling? Kisame asked. Several hours later, the clock struck 4 p.m. and everybody was starting to head to various taverns and bars around Konoha. But most, it seemed, were heading to the especially large tavern that was just a few blocks away from Ichiraku Ramen Place. Ino and Sakura eventually woke up from what seemed like a long nap, not remembering much of what had happened before. Noticing the time, they headed off to find the other girls, Tenten and Hinata, hoping that they could have a bit of a get-together. Hinata? Sakura called out, as she and Ino jumped through Hinata's window. Hinata woke, startled. Sorry, Ino said. What are you doing sleeping this time of day, anyway? Sakura asked incredulously. Hinata blinked. So, Sakura began. Oh! Ino suddenly exclaimed, noticing an object on Hinata's dresser. What's this? Hinata gasped at the small orange fox mask that Ino now held in her hand. Oh, wow, Sakura said, getting ideas. It's almost like an umbu mask. Going around abducting men, have you? Ino said jokingly with the mask over her face. Hinata blushed with an embarrassed, yet frustrated look on her face. Really, Ino, that's not a bad idea, Sakura said deviously. It's actually quite brilliant. That we should get some masks and go abduct men? No, that we should get some masks and go abduct Sasuke. Hinata watched as Ino and Sakura left nearly as quickly as they had appeared, both of them apparently failing to notice the odd pair of legs sticking out from under Hinata's bed. Chuji nearly choked on a pretzel when two figures suddenly burst through the window. H-ha! They both yelled, one with a brown bear mask and the other with a white goat mask. Chuji shivered with distress. Chuji? Ino exclaimed. What are you doing in Sasuke's apartment? Sakura yelled. Don't jump to conclusions, Sakura. Ino yelled, pointing dramatically at Chuji. It may just be a clever disguise. Chuji's eyes went wide as Ino suddenly put her mouth on his, kissing him roughly. Ino? Sakura questioned, raising an eyebrow. Chuji nearly fell over once Ino released him. Seeing Sakura's questioning expression, Ino explained. Well, it broke the illusion the last time I tried that. Sakura pondered. Maybe you didn't try hard enough. Chuji must have thought it was his lucky day when he suddenly found the pink-haired girl on him, kissing him as well. As Sakura released him, she noticed Chuji grinning widely, his cheeks all red. I guess it really is Chuji. But what is he doing here? Chuji mumbled, trying to think up an answer. Watching educational videos? He made a poor attempt at covering what he had been watching on the TV with his hands. Ino picked up one of the videotape covers. Super Ninjugs presents Horizontal no Jutsu XXVI? It's not mine. Chuji complained, smiling nervously. These are Sasuke's? Sakura asked in amazement. I doubt that, Ino said, raising an eyebrow, holding up the side of the tape to Sakura where she could see some writing scribbled in ink. Property of Kakashi, Sakura scoffed, rolling her eyes. I should have known. 5 p.m. Sakura and Ino ditched their masks back at their respective homes before heading back and finally meeting up with Hinata and Tenten. Unlike the other three, Tenten's choice of clothing was white bandage wraps that covered just enough of her chest and another set for her lower region. There was some commotion outside as they neared the tavern. From a distance they instantly recognized the figures. Lee? Tenten called out. Outside the entrance were a desperate guy and Niji holding onto Lee by each arm, pleading with him to not go in. As the girls neared, it became apparent that Lee somehow slipped from his team's grasp and darted into the tavern. They could almost hear Guy's frantic yelling. Lee! Guy-sensei! Lee! No! Inside the tavern, Hinata, Tenten, Ino, and Sakura took a seat at a small 4-person booth that was right across from the bar where Kiba happened to be sitting. Tenten glanced over at her teammates with concern. While Guy tussled with Lee, trying to get the sake away from him, Niji, with a long, exasperated face, took a seat at the bar. Lee and Guy's antics had driven him to drinking. In a far corner, having arrived some time ago, the San siblings sat next to the music player that blared a constant low beat of various songs. After selecting a few mild drinks to taste, Ino and the girls let loose on the gossip. You know, Tenten began, with a devious smile on her face, they say that 20 to 25% of the kunoichi are pregnant. Ino gulped down her beverage, her cheeks turning red from its strength. Yeah, so? Hinata fidgeted with her thumbs, while Sakura was otherwise occupied glancing around the tavern, hoping that Sasuke would randomly appear somewhere. Well, that's about 1 in 4, Tenten grinned mischievously, and there are 4 of us, so huh? Ino laughed. You don't really think you know, Sakura suddenly said thoughtfully, her face turning into an amused smile. I always imagined that if one of us got pregnant, it would be you, Ino pig. What? Ino yelled a little too loudly. Tenten and Sakura giggled. Yeah, Ino, 'cause we just know you're such a whore, they said jokingly. Ino grunted as her eyebrow twitched. After Tenten and Sakura settled down a bit, Tenten glanced over at Hinata who had yet to even touch her drink. What's wrong, Hinata? Tenten asked with concern. Are you doing alright? Hinata blushed. I'm not really supposed to, it's not good for Ino, Sakura, and Tenten blinked. You Ino blinked again. No way! Sakura breathed. Huh. Tenten said in realization, a smile slowly forming on her face. How did that happen? Ino questioned, staring at Sakura. Sakura narrowed her eyes. You were the one whose sexual education involved watching porno videos. I mean, I know how, but that it would be her. Ino exclaimed incredulously, out of all of us? Well, Tenten said matter-of-factly, she is the one with the juicy jugs. A fact made painfully obvious to the other girls by the tiny purple bra-like top that the Hyuga currently sported on her chest. Hinata turned a deep red before hopping up and wandering off to go find another, hopefully less embarrassing table to sit at. A few sips later Ino, Tenten hiccuped, how many guys have you been with? Huh? Ino was caught off guard by the question. Yeah, Ino, Sakura grinned, her face red with intoxication. You tell me, I tell you. Ino blinked, looking into the eyes of Sakura and Tenten, when she suddenly came to the cold, hard realization. Sakura, Tenten and Hinata. Ino frowned as she took in the words of the song that had just started playing in the background. Everyone has had more sex than me, who everyone has had more sex than me, who Ino twitched. Sakura and Tenten blinked. That's it. Ino exclaimed, pounding her fists on the table and suddenly bolting up from her seat, her eyes scanning the room for some suitable man-meat. You! Ino yelled, jumping in front of a table a few rows down that held only a single occupant. Take me! The blonde yelled, grasping her breasts and shaking them at him. Take me now. Hn? Shikamaru questioned, looking up from the puzzle game he was currently toying with. What is it? I have a need. Ino complained, I'm feeling a need, here. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. Sakura leaned out of the booth where she was sitting to catch a glimpse of Ino yelling odd things at her fellow teammate. I really wish I knew where Sasuke was, Sakura pouted, letting her head fall to the table with a thud. Tenten tapped a finger to a lip, suddenly remembering something. She glanced over at Niji, who was sitting at the bar. I think Niji may have been the last one to see Sasuke, Tenten said. Niji turned as a certain pink-haired Kunoichi sat in a stool next to him. Hi. Sakura greeted. I wanted to ask you about. She paused as her eyes met Niji's. They were a bit glazed over. Niji? Sakura began. He was sniffing the air around her with interest. You smell the Hyuga grinned, lovely. Sakura blushed and began to casually twirl at a strand of her pink hair. I can't right now, Shikamaru said, fitting another piece of the cube-like puzzle together. Ino glared at him like he was crazy. Besides, I figured out your little game from the other day, he stated plainly, playing up to me in an attempt to make Sasuke jealous or some other such mind game you women play. The blonde scowled at him. Shikamaru. You're so troublesome. Ino grunted as she stomped off to find someone else to satisfy her. For a moment, Ino toyed with the idea of jumping Niji. But, after she spotted him and Sakura at the bar, the pink-haired girl running her hands through his long beautiful hair, she doubted he would be interested. What Ino didn't see was Tenten, sitting all alone at her booth eyeing Niji with annoyance. Tenten was starting to get bored all by herself. But, when Tenten noticed someone about to walk right by where she was sitting, she came up with a clever way to relieve it. Naruto blinked when he suddenly felt a hand wound tightly around his wrist. Huh? He said as he turned to look back at Tenten, who had just reached out and grabbed him. Sit with me? Tenten pleaded with a friendly smile, her eyes drifting to his orange pants. Oh, Naruto said in surprise, scratching his head with his free arm. Okay. In the background, a different song suddenly started playing. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. Gaara blinked at the pair of breasts that had suddenly been thrust in his face. Temari and Kankuro, across from their brother, were gaping in shock at the blonde Kunoichi who had just from out of nowhere pounced upon the redhead's lap. Well, the pickings were slim, and Ino wasn't exactly thinking straight to begin with. Take me! Ino begged, wriggling enthusiastically. Chapter 28, Dreams Do Come True. The door of the cell clanged shut as Sasuke was led rather forcefully inside to join Karen. Sasuke frowned as Kabuto locked the door shut and Orochimaru smiled at him. Karen immediately latched herself onto Sasuke's arm. Sasuke twitched slightly. Have fun, Sasuke, Orochimaru said, grinning evilly to himself as he exited the room. Kabuto lingered, giving Sasuke a few parting words of advice. And when you two are through copulating, you may ring that bell over there to let us know so that I can come let you out. Oh, and I almost forgot, here's a change of clothes, Kabuto said, setting a sound-style outfit on a small chair within reach through the cell bars, since she is likely to tear off the ones you are wearing. Sasuke gulped as the redhead tightened her grip on his arm. Ino stopped bouncing momentarily, noticing Gaara's confused look. What do you think you are doing? Temari questioned from across the table. I'm trying to get laid. Ino slurred back. Temari gawked at the blonde, but Kankuro simply grinned, nudging his sister. What's the big deal, Temari? Kankuro hiccuped, taking another large sip from his drink. Gaara could probably use some lovin'. Kankuro! Temari scolded. What? Kankuro blinked. Anyway, don't forget about that letter from our village. You're supposed to get pregnant, and me and Gaara are supposed to knock up a few chicks. I see no problem here. Kankuro stopped suddenly. Temari froze. They had been too busy yapping at each other to notice that Ino had taken the whole bottle of sake from the middle of the table and was currently pouring it down Gaara's throat. Gaara seemed rather pleased at this since his siblings had not allowed him to drink any previously. But there was a very important reason for that. No! Temari and Kankuro watched on in terror as Gaara swallowed every drop, blinking slowly and heavily. Ino still sitting on his lap, straddling him in the booth. Huh? Ino asked, looking back, setting the empty sake bottle back on the table. What? Ino turned her head to look back at Gaara just in time to see him give a creepy, yet sleepy smile before he closed his eyes and passed out, falling sideways onto the booth with a thud and a slight bounce. Ino blinked, standing up. He's out, Temari, he's out. Kankuro exclaimed in a panic, grasping at the sides of his head with his hands and pulling at his hair. Oh shit, Kankuro, OSHIT. Temari, breathing slowly, said almost in a whisper. Huh? Ino shrugged, not quite grasping the severity of the situation. Gaara doesn't sleep. He's not supposed to. Tamari muttered. You! Kankuro pointed at Ino. Why'd you have to jump him? Why couldn't you have jumped me instead? Well, Ino said, putting her hand on her hip while looking over Gaara's brother, you're a bit ugly plus your nipples are funny looking. My nipples? Kankuro asked in confusion, looking at his chest. What's wrong with my nipples? Grrr kakuku. The group was suddenly interrupted by a howling laugh and the sound of shifting sand. Gaara stirred, popping up from his seat with a rather wild look. Shikaku! Gasped Tamari and Kankuro. The sand shifted and moved over Gaara's sleeping form until he suddenly sported a small tanuki tail from his butt. Roar! The demon growled almost playfully, pouncing upon Ino and sending her and Gaara to the floor. Gaara's head wobbled from side to side woozily as Ino looked up at him curiously. Hick! Hick! Roar! Gaara's form straddled Ino, pinning her to the ground. Shikaku's tail swishing behind. I think he's drunk, Tamari exclaimed. Meanwhile, the other patrons of the tavern gave little notice to the scene that was developing over in the corner with the Sand siblings. Most were too blind drunk to see, much less care. Over in a booth near the back, Izumo and Kotetsu were drinking with each other when a certain Kunoichi walked up. Anko? Their eyes went wide. She was wearing her usual see-through outfit, but without the concealing jacket. Hello, boys, Anko addressed with a sly grin. The two males didn't even realize they had started drooling. As she sat down with them, both men found themselves simultaneously crossing their legs under the table. She wasted no time getting straight to the point. May I interest you in a threesome? Anko smirked. Pinch me, Kotetsu, Izumo gaped, shaking Kotetsu's shoulders. Is this really happening? Anko laughed. I don't know if I'm really comfortable with seeing him naked, Kotetsu said, pointing at Izumo. I didn't think about that, Izumo muttered in realization. Anko snapped her fingers. I've got it. I can just blindfold the both of you and tie you to my bed. How about that? Izumo and Kotetsu stared at her breasts in contemplation. Okay. Yeah, that sounds fine. They both nodded vigorously. Hinata had just exited the tavern's restroom when she noticed Naruto and Tenten chatting away together. Just the two of them. Alone. By themselves. With no one else. The Hyuga's eyes narrowed slightly, a wave of emotion washing over her. And so I've heard tales of your amazing stamina in battle, and I was wondering, does that hold true in all aspects of exerting yourself? Tenten asked. Naruto blinked. Huh? Just then, Hinata appeared right by their table, a look of newfound determination on her face. Tenten looked up at her fellow female, raising an eyebrow. Oh, Naruto said casually, hey, Hina MMPH. Tenten watched on in shock. Out of nowhere, Hinata had grabbed Naruto's face and kissed him deeply. Naruto blinked as she released him. Naruto, too. Hinata started, but then she saw the look that Tenten was giving her. Hinata turned a deep red. Realizing that she had impulsively done what she had done, in front of everyone, she did the only thing she could think of at the moment as a distraction. She grabbed Kiba off of the closest bar stool and kissed him madly too. But she didn't stop there. She released him and went straight for Shikamaru's booth. But Shika saw her coming and he jumped out of the way of her lips, causing her to simply head over to the next closest booth. And so, Hinata ended up jumping over Guy to get to Lee. To say the least, Lee was quite shocked to find Hinata on top of him, sticking her tongue down his throat. Hinata blinked when he started kissing her back. Alas, just as Lee was really starting to enjoy it, Hinata broke it off and jumped over the booth and ran out off the tavern. Lee blinked repeatedly. What just happened? Naruto asked no one in particular. Wow, what overflowing youthfulness! Guy exclaimed. She must have partaken of many youthful cups of sake. But I thought she hadn't been drinking? Tenten muttered, confused, or had she? I don't know, Naruto said, a blush running across his cheeks, but what a great idea. Naruto glanced over at Sakura giggling giddily over at the bar. Nichi left her momentarily to take a much-needed trip to the restroom. Within moments, Sakura found herself attached to someone's lips. She was so out of it that she didn't even open her eyes to see who it was. Oh yeah. Inner Sakura raved, Ahu? Sakura's eyes flung open to see a Hinata-inspired Naruto kissing her. Ack! Sakura yelled, knocking him off the stool and back into the booth with Tenten. Getting ideas of her own, Tenten puckered up her lips at Naruto, offering him a kiss, but Naruto just sighed and rubbed his sore face from where Sakura had whacked him. Lee? Guy asked as he heard the sound, turning around to see Lee and O. Guy had turned his attention away from his student long enough for Lee to get a hold of Guy's sake and down the whole bottle. Guy paled. In the midst of the confusion, a Shikaku-possessed Gaara hopped up from his position on top of Ino and grabbed her up, slinging her across his shoulders, and dashed outside, taking off down the street to destinations unknown. Shouldn't we try to do something about this? Temari asked Kankuro with great concern. Hick! 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 Kankuro? At that, Kankuro lost the ability to sit up coherently and fell over onto Temari's shoulder, looking up at her groggily. Big sis! Kankuro slurred, his eyes big and glistening. IWUVU. Temari sighed heavily as her brother then began to snore loudly. Oh, Sasuke, Karen pleaded, scooting closer to him. What do I have to do to get a reaction out of you, Sasuke? Talk to me. I don't even know you. Humph, she said, getting up. Karen hummed as she stood in front of Sasuke and began tugging at her clothing. Wait, what are you doing? Sasuke asked slowly. Getting naked. Karen replied matter-of-factly. What? Sasuke paled. I thought you needed to get to know me. Karen smiled. Not like that. Hey, wait, what are you doing? Put that back on. No, don't do that. Suddenly, Sasuke found himself missing the likes of Sakura and her pink hair. Naruto stared at the drink that Tenten had placed in front of him. It's good. Tenten prodded, try it. Naruto stared at the cup unsurely. He almost felt like his tummy was growling at him angrily as he downed the sake and every bit of it dripped into his stomach. I don't feel so well, Naruto complained, holding his stomach. Naruto? Tenten asked with concern. Within moments, Naruto passed out as well. Within him, the beast stirred. Hur. In a dank, dripping chamber, the mighty Kyuubi, the nine-tailed demon, watched an unconscious form of Naruto that had appeared before his gigantic cage that sealed him away. Ha ha ha, the brat is vulnerable. To the giant fox, Naruto appeared to be sleeping face down only a few feet away from the cage. Growling this is my chance. The Kyuubi lifted his giant paw and thrusted his claws through the bars. The bars held back his sharp fingers only mere inches from Naruto's head. Kukuku. The fox laughed, reaching out with his chakra, the orange bubbly stuff eking out closer and closer to the unconscious shinobi, but something gave the Kyuubi pause just as his chakra was beginning to absorb Naruto. What is this? The demon asked as more water than usual fell from the ceiling onto his head. But this water was not clear. The curious fox shifted his focus and lifted up his head, sticking his tongue out to taste the oddly colored water. The Kyuubi grinned evilly, lapping it up, not realizing that after his orange chakra wrapped around Naruto, an ill, greenish color was seeping out from the boy, contaminating the orange and slowly sneaking up on the fox. Sake? The fox asked before turning to see that the green ill-colored chakra had now passed into his cage, moving up him, and had turned his foot green. Arrgh, it burns. The Kyuubi growled angrily as his beautiful, fiery orange fur turned green from the burning alcohol as it fell on him, and the image of the culprit and cause of all of his pain, Naruto, disappeared. The Ninetales' loud growls and various death threats were lost on Naruto and fell on deaf ears. Naruto groggily awoke moments later to find his hand bubbling with an orange and green chakra. I don't feel so well, Naruto complained, grasping his tummy and looking up at Tenten from where his chin rested on the table. I think I need to through HIC. Naruto suddenly hiccuped, causing all the bubbles in his chakra to burst all at once before reforming. Tenten looked at the blonde with concern. Are you Oka PHFFTT? Tenten made a face as Naruto farted gratuitously, again causing his bubbling chakra to burst. Ugh, Naruto winced in pain as his face turned green. Tenten? Tenten had gotten up and left, waving her hand in front of her face frantically. I think I'll go check up on Lee. Naruto scrunched up his face. I think my tummy's mad at me, he said pitifully. Sakura giggled as she felt the alcohol really going to her head. Niji was giving her a neck rub as they both sat at the bar. Want to hear something interesting? Sakura smiled. What? Niji smirked back. Hee, Sakura said, stroking Niji's long, beautiful hair. Your hair's even prettier than Sasuke's. Niji blinked at that, raising an eyebrow slightly before grinning widely. Want to hear something really interesting? Several days earlier, Niji pressed his ear to the door. He could hear a distinct conversation going on just beyond. It sounded very important. I need to get a better look. Niji paused a moment, Byakugan. Now he could both see and hear what was going on. It was Hinata and her father. Father? Hinata asked as she looked up at him. Do you know why I have summoned you? Hayashi asked sternly. She saw him staring at her with a very serious look. Yes. Hayashi closed his eyes and sighed. Whose is it? Hinata shivered slightly. Well? Hinata was silent for a good minute or so, carefully thinking over her answer. Would she lie to her father, or would she tell him the truth? Just as her father opened his mouth to prod her further, she finally gave him an answer. The Uchiha Sasuke. Niji's mouth hung open from behind the door. Hinata's father blinked. After a few moments he shrugged, sighing. It could have been worse. Hinata watched as her father left the room. Niji quickly scrambled off so that he would not get caught eavesdropping. I had been worried she might have been having relations with that Uzumaki brat that was hugging her the other day. Hayashi thought to himself as he left the room, I'm glad she found someone from a somewhat prestigious clan. I was beginning to think I was going to have to hook her up with her cousin one day. Say what? Sakura shrieks. It's the cold, hard truth. Niji said, taking another drink of sake. Sakura twitched. Do you want to hear another cold, hard truth? Kiba exclaimed drunkenly, leaning over Niji from his seat next to him in order to address Sakura. Hey! Niji complained. I just found out that Ino's dad has been secretly banging my mom. Kiba whined. Why should I care? Sakura howled, still torn up over the news about Sasuke. Shino told me today that his dad has been secretly screwing your mom. Kiba exclaimed. What? Sakura exclaimed in horror. Huh? Shikamaru piped up, taking a seat next to Sakura at the bar, but wait a minute, Chuji told me yesterday that his dad was secretly banging Sakura's mom. What? Sakura screamed. Choji's dad? Niji asked, wouldn't it cause like an earthquake? Wow, Sakura, Kiba commented. Your mom sure is getting a lot of action. Mommy? Sakura's eyes got wide. Crash! Everyone stopped what they were doing to look for the source of the sudden noise. Then there was another loud crash as Lee tore out of the booth, knocking down his ass. The sake had taken its full effect. Lee quickly took up the music player with a swift kick. The silence now brought full attention to even those who were the most drunk that something was very, very wrong. People really started clearing out of the tavern when Guy tried to restrain Lee again, but failed, with Guy being sent crashing through a window. Lee, stop! Tintin jumped at Lee, grabbing his leg, but was quickly shaken off. Niji! Help! Tintin called out desperately. Tintin looked up to see Sakura wobbling towards the exit with a passed-out drunk Niji slung over her shoulder. Damn it! Tintin whined. Sakura could only shrug her shoulders as a reply. Sorry. Sakura called back, getting Niji to safety. Help! Anybody? Tintin yelled throughout the emptying tavern as she pulled a bar stool up above her head from where it was secured, swinging it at Lee's head in an attempt to knock him out. Lee dodged, his sake-filled body wobbling like putty, the flung chair nearly hitting Tamari, who had to duck down, dragging her brother with her under the table to save themselves. Tintin! She turned to see her Guy-sensei blast through the wall with a dynamic entry kick meant for Lee. Tintin's sweat dropped as Guy gave her a smile and thumbs up in midair, completely missing Lee. Guy's foot hit the edge of the bar, spinning him until he landed face first in the sake storage area. Box after box fell on his head. Oh, Guy grunted in pain. While Lee decided to have a one-on-one fight with a few more bar stools, Tintin turned as Tamari dragged Kankuro out the door. A little help? Tintin pleaded. Tamari smiled nervously. Sorry. What about you? Tintin asked as Shikamaru wandered past. Shikamaru sighed. It's too troublesome. Tintin completed his sentence with him. Somehow, I knew you'd say that. Tintin sighed, assessing the situation. She looked over the halfway destroyed tavern. I can't handle this alone. Tintin said quickly, time to bail out. Guy-sensei. Tintin yelled, jumping over the bar and grabbing her teacher's legs. I'll save you. Lee vaguely watched, wobbling from side to side as Tintin bolted up from behind the bar, pulling Guy through the air by both legs. Soon, Lee was seemingly the only one left in the tavern. Did everyone get out? The bartender asked his customers that were now strewn about all over the ground outside the tavern. I think so, Tintin replied, breathing heavily. Everyone outside listened as the crashes and loud booms continued inside. Oh, Naruto grunted, looking up. Where did everybody go? Naruto looked around groggily to find that he and a blind, drunk, and destructive Lee were the only ones remaining in the large tavern. Naruto hiccuped again, chakra pouring from him, his eyes becoming red and slit like the QB. A small foxtail and ears in the form of bubbling, green contaminated, orange chakra appeared. Naruto attempted to jump up from his seat, wobbling drunkenly to the nearest stool to hold onto for balance. With that action, Lee finally spotted him. Naruto hiccuped again loudly this time, enough for Lee to hear. "I accept your challenge." Lee slurred. "Huh?" Naruto asked, almost with a growl, his teeth becoming fangs as a drunken Lee lunged for him. Outside, all the tavern patrons sat and listened to the destruction that ensued inside the tavern. Crash crash boom bang boom splat crash 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 splat splat. Although many of those outside were in various degrees of being or almost being passed out. 2 hours had passed since everyone had evacuated the tavern, but many were still too intoxicated to attempt to walk home. And so, the shinobi came up with various interesting ways to pass the time. Tenten took the opportunity to feel up Niji while he was out cold. Sakura was helping. Temari and Kankuro were leaned up against the building across the street. Kankuro had finally regained consciousness. Soon, Tenten grew bored with playing with Niji and decided to come sit by Kankuro. "Hey there," she said slyly. "Why hello?" Kankuro slurred playfully. Temari elbowed him. "What?" he asked. Temari snorted. There was a long pause. So Kankuro began, looking over Tenten's body. "How'd you like to come over to my place later?" And Kankuro. Temari scolded. "What?" "It's not like I'm taking advantage of her or anything. She's not the one that's drunk." I am. Tenten blinked. Temari narrowed her eyes. "But she could still take advantage of you." Kankuro blinked. "And that's bad, how?" Temari sighed heavily. Crash. Naruto threw another chair at Lee, which he dodged. "Why are we fighting, again?" Naruto asked. Lee gave no answer. Naruto swung his claws at Lee over and over again, never quite managing to hit him. Eventually Lee tired of dodging and retaliated, giving a swift, youthful kick to Naruto's nether regions. "Gah!" Naruto yelled, doubling over. "Damn, brat, even I felt that." The Kyuubi muttered to itself. A bit later, as the alcohol finally began to wear off, Naruto and Lee were exhausted, and Naruto finally managed to land a hit on Lee with his claws. Unfortunately, it also tore Lee's green shorts off, revealing his pink, lotus blossom pattern-covered underpants. Shizen was on her way to Tsunade's office when she came upon the odd sight outside the tavern. Everybody was just all over the ground. Many of them unconscious. Some of them making out. Others were attempting to. "Oh, that's just not right." Shizen grimaced. "Anko, you can't do that in public." "Sorry." 3 distinct voices called back. As Shizen muttered as she attempted to walk through the bodies all over the fairly dark street. "Oh." Niji yelled, "You stepped on me." "Sorry." Shizen replied. Once she finally got past the human road hazard, she suddenly realized something. "Taunton?" Shizen looked around for the little piggy that had previously been right behind her. "Where did you go?" That's when she saw them. "O-I-N-K." The pig called out as she was energetically humped by Akamaru. "Bark, bark, bark." "Taunton!" Shizen exclaimed, distraught. She quickly pulled the pig away and scooped her up in her arms. "Sorry," Mankiba said, half asleep. "Akamaru gets that way sometimes." Oink. Taunton offered an apology. "Ugh." Shizen grunted. With that, Shizen continued on her way to the Hokage's office. When the sounds of the battle finally stopped, a few brave souls ventured inside. The tavern was ruined. A bruised and battered unconscious Lee was sideways across a sleeping battle-torn Naruto. All visible signs of the fox's chakra were gone. The Kyuubi grumbled a terrible hangover, making his head pound, gnawing at his cage. "Stupid brat." Meanwhile, Gaara's demon was far more enjoying the interesting effects of joyous sake. "Where to now, Itachi?" Kisame asked his Akatsuki partner as they ventured down the night-lit streets of Konoha. Well, suddenly, 2 figures dashed right past them. Gaara ran as Ino rode on his shoulders, exclaiming, "Wee!" Itachi blinked as they ran past. "Sasori? Deidara?" Itachi asked. Kisame gaped at his partner. "Itachi?" Kisame asked with concern, waving his hand in front of Itachi's eyes. "Are you alright?" "You mean that wasn't Sasori and Deidara that just ran past?" "No." Kisame shook his head. Itachi pondered. Maybe you're tired," Kisame offered, cautiously. "Perhaps we should find a place to sleep for the night." Itachi blinked and looked around. "How about there?" Itachi replied, pointing to an establishment a few buildings down. Kisame gave the Uchiha an odd look. Itachi, that's a brothel. Oh. Maybe we should just keep walking. Yes? Tsunade asked as there was a knock on her office door. Hokage-sama? Shizen said as she entered. What is it, Shizen? Tsunade said, not even looking up from her desk as she was intently scribbling onto some papers. Well, I came to ask you about that. Shizen said, pointing over at the large sword that the Umbu had found and brought over and left in Hokage's office. What about it? Tsunade replied, again not even looking up. Shouldn't we be asking all the ninja of the village about it? See if anyone recognizes it? Or anything? The Hokage continued writing. Shizen blinked. Ma'am? Are you even paying attention? Shizen approached the desk, but Tsunade quickly covered up the piece of paper. Tsunade-sama, Shizen said slowly and suspiciously, just what are you doing? Tsunade started with a serious look into her assistant's eyes before her face suddenly broke out into a wide mischievous smile, holding up the paper for Shizen to see. Shizen gasped, you are writing those letters again. And after you promised not to do that anymore. Tsunade leaned back in her chair and propped her feet up on the desk. Oh, Shizen, but Hokage-sama. They'll know it was you. Don't worry, Tsunade laughed, they'll be far too drunk to notice. Shizen frowned. It's still unethical. And sneaky. Shizen, Tsunade scolded, why do you have to say that about everything truly fun that I want to do? Shizen sighed heavily, giving up and leaving Tsunade to her letter writing. Kisame stopped in front of an establishment that offered room and board. How about we stop here, Itachi? The Uchiha nodded. Eventually, the alcohol's effects began to wear off on Gaara, his tail of sand falling to the ground as just regular sand. Gaara stopped running and blinked, setting Ino on the ground before walking off. Hey, Ino complained, you can't just leave me here. My head's still buzzing, I'm too dizzy to make it home alone. The sand shinobi ignored her. Suddenly, Ino felt a presence behind her. Hello. Ack! Ino jumped as the guy startled her. Hi. The guy said with a creepy fake smile. Ino raised an eyebrow. Who are you? You may call me Sai. Well, Sai, Ino replied a bit more pleasantly, noticing the guy wasn't half bad looking. You may call me Ino. I heard you say you needed someone to take you home. Sai said, moving to pick her up in his arms, and I am someone. Well, yeah. Ino said unsurely as she was lifted off the ground. So what do you do? Ino asked as they walked along. I'm an artist. Want to see my picture book? Not right now. She said, oh. Maybe I could model for you sometime. Sai grinned wider. Naked? Ino blinked. Okay. She suddenly replied with great excitement. Itachi yes, Kisame? There is only one bed in this room. You may sleep in the tub, if you wish. Itachi offered. Kisame sighed. Tsunade was in the middle of sealing up another envelope when she managed to accidentally spray herself with one of the perfume bottles that she would spray every letter with to make it extra special sexy. I hope it's not bad that I sprayed this directly in my face. She turned around the bottle to find a warning label. The Hokage raised an eyebrow. Warning, direct skin contact can cause drowsiness, erratic behavior, hormonal shifts, or extreme horniness. Use with caution. Do not attempt complicated jutsu while under the influence of this product. Tsunade pondered, rubbing her chin with her hand. But then, she began to feel very strange. Kisame lazily flicked at the water in the bathtub until he was sure that he could hear Itachi snoring softly in his bed on the other side of the door. At that, Kisame skillfully got up without making a sound, letting the water stream down his naked body before he put his shorts back on and snuck out, walking past the sleeping Itachi and jumping out the window. This was his chance to track down and retrieve Samahata. But, unfortunately for Itachi, Kisame neglected to close the window to the room. Kisame looked around the empty Konoha street. Where should he start looking for his sword? Just then, glancing upward towards the far side of the village, he noticed a single window light in the tall building go out. That must be the Hokage's place. He said. If they are keeping my sword, it is probably there. With that, Kisame headed straight for Tsunade's office. The blue man leapt onto the roof that was right at the base of the dark window. Pressing his face to the glass, he could just barely see inside. Samahata! He rejoiced mentally, spotting his precious weapon resting against the wall. Cautiously pushing the window open, Kisame slipped inside. But he was not alone. Kisame froze with his hand inches away from his sword when the lights were suddenly flicked on. A decidedly feminine laugh drew his attention to the other side of the office, where a big, booby lady stood leaning provocatively against the wall with her shirt draping halfway off of her shoulder. Kisame swallowed hard. He had forgotten to disguise himself with the transformation jutsu before going out, and the light clearly illuminated his blue body for the woman to see. Should he simply kill her and leave no witnesses, or make a run for it? "Hey, there, sexy!" Tsunade suddenly exclaimed. Kisame blinked and looked around. "Do you mean me?" the blue man questioned with surprise. The blonde nodded, walking towards him. "Who are you?" Kisame asked curiously as she backed him up towards the wall. He had no idea she was actually the Hokage of the entire village. Tsunade simply grinned, leaning in closer to him until she was breathing down his neck. Kisame glared at her skeptically as her warm breath tickled his skin. Whoever she is, she must be really intoxicated, he thought. "Is it hot in here, or is it just me?" Tsunade giggled, moving to pull off her shirt entirely. "Nope," Kisame replied, "it's getting pretty hot." By midnight, all the drunks had picked themselves up and moved on, or went home, but many of the girls opted to clean up first, so they headed for the hot spring at the bathhouse. Even Ino had decided to drop her off at the bathhouse. Though, she planned to rendezvous with him later. Sakura adjusted her towel around her as she and several other women in the bathhouse stared out the door to the outside that was only open a tiny crack. "Is he still out there?" Ino asked. Tenten squinted. "Yeah." Out in the hot springs sat a single occupant, giggling to himself, his face red off of the sake. The old pervert laying in wait, it was, of course, none other than Jiraiya. "What are we going to do?" Temari began. "I don't know," Kurenai said, disgusted. "I'll take care of it." The women all turned to face their savior, Anko, waltzing towards them with a sly grin on her face. They weren't terribly surprised to find that she didn't bother with wearing a towel. "Where is he?" Anko asked, hands on her hips. Hinata pointed out into the bath. "Give me 5 minutes. I'll take care of it." Jiraiya went rigid as he suddenly felt hot breath on his neck. "You know, I'm a real fan of your book." Jiraiya blinked as Anko started playing with his hair. "How about we go back to your place and you can give me a private reading?" she said playfully. The girls back at the bathhouse blinked, pushing the door open all the way. That was quick. Jiraiya was nowhere in sight, but Anko was still there. I wonder how long it will take him to figure out it's just a clone. Jiraiya and Anko were nearly to his place when Jiraiya made the mistake of grabbing the clones, but poof, Anko disappeared just like that in a puff of smoke. "Why me?" Jiraiya pouted. "I should have known this was too good to be true." The white-haired pervert trudged along all alone for a while before noticing something odd. "Why is there a light still on at the Hokage's office at this time of night?" Jiraiya asked as he glanced off into the distance. Just as soon as Tsunade had pulled her top off, Kisame heard something outside the office door. He gasped, "Someone's coming!" "Huh, really?" Tsunade asked. "I don't feel anything." The Akatsuki member moved away from the blonde, causing her to lose her balance and fall to the floor. She seemed to drift off to sleep as the blue man took Samahata from where it rested and jumped out the window to make his getaway. "Knock knock, Tsunade? You in there?" "Knock knock knock, Tsunade?" Jiraiya called out, opening the door. "Tsunade!" he exclaimed as he spotted the Hokage's sleeping form on the other side of the room. "Tsuna." Jiraiya paused, his eyes growing wide. She was topless, and he had a full glorious view of her breasts. Jiraiya stuttered and babbled as his brain melted and went to a very happy place. Grinning ear to ear, he slowly reached out his hand to touch her boob. But then he paused midair. Should I really be doing this? She'll kill me if she wakes up, he mentally argued with himself. She's asleep, she won't notice. No! It's not right! It wouldn't be very gentlemanly of me, but just one little pat, his hand got a little closer. No. He backed away. Yes. No. Yes. No. Maybe? No. Jiraiya said solemnly, letting his hand fall to his side, tears streaming down his face pitifully. Wait! The Erosanin exclaimed, cheering up a bit. I can still sit and stare at them. Stare him, Jiraiya smirked after a few minutes of contemplation. I have a better idea. If I take her home and make her think that that would convince her to, hey, that might work. Jiraiya said, jumping up and carefully pulling Tsunade's shirt back over her. Let's go, Tsunade, he smiled, carefully picking her up, turning off the light, and taking her away. Is this the right place? Kisame blinked as he jumped back through the window of his and Itachi's room. Itachi? Kisame asked as he surveyed the now strangely empty room. Itachi? The shark man called out pitifully. Itachi, where did you go? Kisame turned around and noticed various fingernail marks dug into the sides of the windowsill as though someone had been dragged through it while trying to hold on for dear life. Something's wrong. Kisame blinked, noticing Itachi's pants minus Itachi tossed onto the bed. His shoes were still at the foot of the bed as well. Itachi! Tsunade squinted her eyes as the morning light came in on her. What? How did I get here? She looked around to see that she was in a soft bed, covered with a warm blanket. The Hokage sat up and rubbed her eyes. But then she looked over and noticed a large bulge in the covers. A large, person-size, bulge. Oh, hell. Tsunade muttered, pulling down the covers. Hey, baby! Jiraiya? Jiraiya sat up, grinning at her. Wait? What? When how? What the you? What? You were great last night. You took advantage of me? Tsunade yelled angrily. No, no, no. Jiraiya waved his hands frantically. You jumped me. You were all over me. I have valiantly tried to fight you off, but you were so determined to have me. Tsunade glared at him skeptically. Her eyebrow twitched. Guess I'm just too sexy, Jiraiya sighed. But the great and wise Hokage began to catch on. Wait just a minute. Tsunade said, looking over herself, if we had sex, why am I still dressed? Why are you still dressed? My shirt's off. It's the law for your shirt to be off. Jiraiya was silent. His little idea was falling apart. Jiraiya. Tsunade grinned slyly. What does the tattoo on my ass look like? Huh? What does it look like? In fact, what does it say? If you can't tell me that, then I'll know we never did the naked tango. Jiraiya paled. Tattoo right, the white-haired man then began to really sweat. While Jiraiya babbled away, fearing for his life at what Tsunade would do to him, the Hokage wandered over to look out the window, sticking her hands in her pockets. Tsunade muttered as her hand hit something. I remember this. She exclaimed, bringing the small perfume bottle up to her face. I sprayed it on me and then I felt really warm and then I can't really remember. Tsunade glanced back over at her fellow Sannin and the sad puppy dog eyes he was making at her. He really wasn't that bad looking after all. The Hokage paused and thought, I always lose the bets I make. It's just my luck. She scoffed, I should have known that as soon as I bet on Jiraiya in that silly pool that I would lose one way or another. Jiraiya blinked. Tsunade stared at the bottle. Oh, what the hell? Might as well lose on my own terms for once. Besides, it's been far too long since I've gotten any, anyway. With that, Tsunade sprayed herself with the perfume again. Tsunade? Jiraiya questioned as she sprayed him as well. Tsunade! He yelled in surprise as she made a flying leap onto the bed and onto Jiraiya. And so, the two had a bunch of hot, dirty sex, and all of Jiraiya's wildest dreams finally came true. Tsunade had a bunch of fun too. 2 days later, does anybody think it's strange that nobody has seen Sasuke in days? Naruto asked as he gulped down some ramen. No. Kiba replied with disinterest. No. Shino said. What does it matter? Chuji commented, stuffing some chips in his mouth. Maybe Orochimaru got him. Shikamaru said plainly. Orochimaru? Naruto screamed. Huh? Why are you so concerned about Sasuke anyway? Shikamaru said, yawning. Sakura won't stop asking me if I've seen him. I wish Sakura would just ask about me once in a while. Naruto exclaimed, jumping around outside the ramen stand. We've got to do something. HN? Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. Shikamaru, you've got to come up with a plan. Naruto shouted, we'll get a search party. Kiba, you can bring Akamaru. Shino, you've got your bugs. Chuji, you've got you. And we need to get Neji and Lee and Sasuke? Chuji offered. No, Chuji, Naruto corrected, Sasuke's the one we're looking for. No, Sasuke. Kiba pointed. Naruto blinked. Sasuke had just walked past directly behind Naruto. Sasuke! Naruto yelled, what? How? Where have you been anyway? I don't really want to talk about it. Sasuke replied, crossing his arms and walking away quickly. Flashback, ring ring ring. Sasuke rang the bell vigorously to summon Kabuto, while Karen pulled at him, trying to get on top of him. Yes, Sasuke? Kabuto asked on his way in. Done already, are you? That was quick. Are you having any erectile dysfunction? Because I have several medical jutsu that can fix that. The Uchiha panted, struggling to get away from the crazed female. I need to go to the bathroom, Sasuke stated in a strained voice. Oh. Give him some space, Karen, Kabuto sighed, unlocking the door. The redhead pouted as Sasuke squeezed out the door as soon as it was open. So, Sasuke breathed, which way is it? It's down that hall. Kabuto pointed. Thanks, Sasuke said, taking off down the hall, down several corridors, and straight out the exit and into the woods. 2 hours later, wow, Sasuke must have really had to take a dump. Karen commented to Kabuto. Orochimaru had joined them minutes earlier. Don't you think he's been gone a long time? Orochimaru said, perhaps, I should go looking on him. Kabuto raised an eyebrow. Just to make sure he's okay. Orochimaru defended. Kabuto contemplated. I should go check on him. Karen exclaimed enthusiastically. No, flashback end. Later that night, ever since Sasuke had seemingly disappeared, Sakura and Ino took to breaking into his room each night, sleeping there occasionally when they weren't sleeping over at someone else's place, of course, and going through his things, waiting for him to show up so that they could surprise him. But, on this night, they would be the one surprise. Ino stirred, hearing a noise at the window. Her eyes went wide. Sakura. What? Sakura complained as she felt Ino poking her shoulder. Sakura turned. The window flew open, sending a breeze through the girl's hair. Sasuke? They breathed. Sasuke jumped onto the edge of the bed where they laid, smirking with red eyes. He stared at the scantily clad Kunoichi with great determination and in one fell swoop, took off his pants and threw them into the wind, basking in front of them in his full glory. And there was much rejoicing. Chapter 29, Prelude to End. 1 week later, oh God, what could she possibly have in store for us this time? A Jounin whined as he and several others made their way into Tsunade's office. I don't know, the Jounin's friend answered, but I'm almost scared. Me? Scared? I'm a grown man. What's wrong with me? Perhaps it has to do with the fact that I believe the last time we were here, the Hokage said something about not being able to wear any clothes at all once week 3 hits. Perhaps you were afraid that everyone will see your small penis, Sai said plainly, pausing a moment before wandering off. What the hell is with that guy? What is the news, Hokage-sama? Guy said with great enthusiasm as the last of the men arrived for yet another one of Tsunade's ninja meetings. Well, hey, quit that. Tsunade began, but then stifled a giggle, kicking at her desk. Guy cocked his head and stared at the Hokage, as did a few others. Seriously, not now. Tsunade breathed in a harsh whisper in the direction of her desk. Shizen wandered over and peered at Tsunade's cheeks and their rising level of redness. The Hokage kicked at her desk again and spoke in a low whisper, if you don't stop it right now I will, Hokage-sama? Tsunade shifted around, smiled and looked up at the curious looks of Shizen, Guy, and several others. Shizen looked at the desk and then looked at Tsunade. She twitched, a Tsunade-sama yes? Isis, there's someone under your desk? Her assistant asked incredulously. No, the Hokage said, grinning oddly, whatever gave you that idea? Shizen sighed, thinking, I don't even want to know. Guy scratched his head, what's going on? Tsunade blinked. Oh yes. The meeting! She exclaimed. This meeting's going to be a little bit different, the Hokage said. For once I have good things to report. Several relieved sighs were heard across the room. Everyone, follow me outside. Huh? Come on, this way, what's going on? Naruto asked as he and the others filed out of the room, following their large-busted Hokage. Don't know. Shikamaru answered. I thought you knew everything. Chuji commented. Shikamaru shrugged. Have you guys seen Sasuke around? Naruto asked. Shikamaru stared at Naruto oddly. Not this, again? The Hokage stopped in front of a large building. Hey, Kiba yelled, this is the vet hospital where Hana works. Right on cue, Hana and Izuka appeared from the building. Come on inside. Hana waved. Soon, they all found themselves staring at a large animal in a stable. A horse? Shikamaru commented. Wow, a horse! There aren't usually many in this village. Naruto exclaimed. She's on loan from a neighboring town. Hana explained. Hokage-sama, Kakashi asked, do you mind if I ask what is going on? Well, you see, you male need have done a good job this past week, a very good job, perhaps too good in fact. We are at 90% and finally within our projected goal. Whoa, you mean 90% of all the women in the village are pregnant? The mass of men said with surprise. Why, yes. Tsunade grinned. So does this mean? Yes, I won't be putting any odd laws into effect this time. You get to keep your pants on. Oh, thank God. Came several elated cries. Sai appeared oddly disappointed. As Hana walked over to brush the horse, Niji saw an opportunity to speak to her. He began, I wanted to apologize for my behavior the last time I saw you. I was not myself. Hana simply smiled, taking Niji by the arm. You get to be my first volunteer. Volunteer for what? Niji pondered. But, Tsunade began. Bringing my plan to fruition has had a troublesome side effect, Tsunade continued. I have a bad feeling about this. All of our current medical staff happen to be women. All of those women are currently pregnant. Do you see a problem here? She asked the crowd. They all shook their heads uneasily. If they are all pregnant, in a little over 8½ months, who's going to deliver all the babies? The Hokage exclaimed. The men mumbled and shrugged. You are. Tsunade said matter-of-factly, pointing at the shinobi. Twitch. Twitch. What? The room roared with the collective yell of every single male there. Before the men had a chance to even get over their shock, Tsunade spoke again. And today, we are going to have our first lesson. The Hokage pointed. The men's eyes looked in the direction she pointed. It was the horse. Oh, look! Tsunade smiled, clapping her hands together. Hana already has a volunteer. Niji twitched. Huh? What's the horse for? Naruto asked, scrunching up his face. Naruto, that is not any old regular horse. That is a very, very pregnant mommy horse that is about ready to burst at any minute. Several guys in the back were becoming visibly uncomfortable. Niji turned as Hana patted him on the shoulder, handing him something. I am almost afraid to ask. Niji commented. No need, Hana grinned, spinning the horse around to where its butt was facing Niji and everyone. You want me to what? Niji paled. Lesson 1, check and see how the horse is doing by going on and sticking your arm up in there. Hana replied, be sure to put the glove on first. Suddenly, a random shout came from out of nowhere that sounded suspiciously like Tintin. Go on, Niji. You can do it. You're good at this. Niji's face turned beet red. As Hana pushed Niji closer to the horse, many of the guys were making gagging noise and falling over at the prospect, but Naruto began to laugh. Huh. Niji has to stick his hand up a horse's butt. You know, Kiba corrected, that's not technically the butt. Naruto raised an eyebrow. As Niji was getting closer to finding his hand in a most unpleasant place, he suddenly realized something and stepped back. I can just use my Byakugan to see inside the horse. Won't I be more helpful that way? Niji said sternly. Hana pondered it over. Okay, sure, Niji, step to the side and use the Byakugan next. Hana called out. Naruto's eyes got big when he was suddenly pulled from the crowd by the arm of Kiba's sister. Sucks to be you. Kiba commented as Naruto was hauled over to the horse's rear. This time, 10,000 years of therapy was needed all around, and even more would be needed before it's all over. In the days that followed, the men were all trained in the wondrous arts of birthing, and after a rigorous month-long course, they all reluctantly became certified midwives. As a reward, the Hokage reinstated the allowance of modest clothing to be worn by everyone once again. Jiraiya was suspiciously exempt from this course, which took the place of what Tsunade had originally planned for the final month of her 3-month plan to shore up the number of ninjas in the village. This led some to speculate that he was in fact shacking up with said Hokage, which led to much jealousy all around. What man wouldn't want to be in Jiraiya's ninja sandals now? 9 months later. The past 2.5 weeks were the most hectic that Konoha had ever seen. 90% of the women had gone into labor within that same short time period, and utter chaos erupted. There was not enough space in the hospital, so the women overflowed into the streets. Eventually, the Ninja Academy was turned into a makeshift maternity ward, along with Umbu headquarters, since there were so many women in the Umbu pregnant, and hey, they were already there anyway. At the moment though, the male members of Teams 7, 8, 10, and Team Guy were gathered in the actual hospital. Since the insanity had begun, they had not had the chance to properly check up on their female teammates and peers, what with the rushing about from one makeshift hospital to another. Only now could they all get together at one time as things began to die down. Chapter 30. Version 1, Ending 1. Almost all the babies had already been born. Now, they all walked towards a large pane of glass down the hall that separated the sterile room lined with aisles of beds each filled with mothers and babies from the outside. Gaara and Kankuro were already there, glancing inside with curious eyes. Kankuro smiled as Temari waved at him from inside. As Shikamaru and Shuji arrived at the viewing window, the others following behind, Shikamaru caught sight of Temari smiling and waving. Shikamaru blinked. She was holding up two small babies where he could see. Even though they had only a small amount of their dark hair, it was sticking straight up in an almost prickly fashion. She shrugged, grinning. "I'm guessing these are yours then?" she said with more of a statement than a question. The Nara gaped a bit, and then jumped as Shuji slapped a hand on his shoulder, startling him. "I'm an uncle," Shuji declared, pumping a fist into the air as tears dramatically streamed down his face. Shikamaru tilted his head down and sighed. As Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke, who miraculously decided to show up, reached the window, Asuma just behind was pulled aside by a male nurse who seemed to tell him something important. Moments later, Asuma announced with a grin, "I'm a father. Kurina just had him a few moments ago." "Congratulations," the group exclaimed. Just then, a different nurse down the hall started yelling someone's name. "Kakashi? Kakashi Hatake? Is there a Kakashi around here?" The copy Nin froze as the nurse drew closer. "Here's Kakashi-sensei." "Kakashi-sensei's right here." Naruto yelled exuberantly, "Right, Kakashi-sensei?" The Hatake's eye twitched slightly as a large bead of sweat poured down his face. What news could they possibly have for him? The nurse looked down at his clipboard before staring back up at Kakashi. Suddenly, the nurse smiled and exclaimed, "Congratulations, it's a boy." Kakashi blinked and slowly began to smile. "And 47 girls." Kakashi's smile twitched as all the blood drained from his face, his knees collapsed from under him, and he fell out on the floor. While everyone stared at poor Kakashi, they were interrupted by a screech emanating from behind the viewing window. Naruto and Kiba looked curiously at Ino, who was staring intently at her tiny infant's face. "Why the hell doesn't mine look like Sasuke?" the blonde complained loudly. Temari raised an eyebrow at the yelling of her neighbor, happening to glance at the baby which could easily pass as one of hers. Shikamaru blinked as Temari shot him a glare. Shikamaru banged his forehead on the glass. "Why me?" he mumbled. "So troublesome a few beds over." Tintin was just the opposite for me now. She cooed to her little Niji and said, "I'm going to brush your hair and make you a pretty girl." "Ma'am," the male nurse said. "That's a boy." "I know." Tintin grinned. "What?" Niji exclaimed behind the glass window. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "I was wrong. All the women are crazy. I take exception to that." Sasuke turned to see Sakura waving at him. He cautiously waved back, almost afraid to look. All the horrors came flooding back. The pink hair, the nightmares, Itachi dying of laughter. "No wait, that's a good thing." And so, he looked. "Holy," he whispered. There sat Sakura, surrounded by 5 dark-haired boys. "Yes!" Sasuke squealed mentally, while outwardly remaining his angsty self. "Whoa," Kiba commented, to Shino, "the Uchiha must have super sperm." "I find such a thing unlikely," Shino commented, as he was the first one to notice that Sakura's children looked far more like Shikamaru than Sasuke. Watching it all, face pressed firmly into the glass with youthful tears of emotion bursting from his face, was Lee. "Sakura, my love." Lee interrupted, tears streaming down his face. "Is there any hope for our love? Will our youthfulness never cross paths now that the springtime of youth has faded away?" Sakura's sweat dropped as she received several odd stares from the other women in the ward. But, she supposed she might as well humor him. Sakura called out, "Lee, I love you, too. I'll have your babies next time." "YOSH!" Lee yelled triumphantly before rushing away to do something youthful. There were a few moments of silence after Lee's outburst, but it quickly faded with a scream. One of the 2 Umbu in the building held up a little red-haired boy to the onlookers. He had Gaara's cute little raccoon-like eyes along with a tanuki tail and ears. "What the fuck?" Temari exclaimed. Kankuro, who was watching from the glass, turned to Naruto and said slowly in a creeped-out voice, "Demon spawn, that's a medical impossibility." Shizen exclaimed, looking at the odd child from several beds over. Shizen looked up to see Sakura and Ino pointing at something to her side. "What?" Shizen asked, looking over at Hinata. Hinata smiled, rocking her tiny little orange fox. Shizen was speechless. Did Hinata have sex with a fox? Naruto asked no one in particular, scratching his head. Sasuke raised an eyebrow, looking Naruto over, up and down. Apparently, she did. Sasuke stated. Gugu gaei. He. The fox baby cooed. It can talk. Kiba exclaimed. More demon spawn, Kankuro mumbled. Hinata hugged the little fox human baby demon spawn and squeaked. Ai Gaara had his hands up on the glass, looking at his family, and smiled rather creepily, Kankuro thought. The Umbu smiled back at Gaara. They mouthed to each other, I love you. Kankuro and Temari stared at Gaara in shock. But Kankuro was quickly distracted by the voice of Hana Inuzuka, who was holding up a cute little boy who she had already taken a purple marker to drawing some cute face markings on him, just like Kankuro's. Kankuro melted. It was then Gaara's turn to stare at Kankuro strangely. Then, there was a commotion as Irika arrived to look through the window. Anko suddenly jumped up from her bed and sprinted to the glass, causing Irika to flinch. Isn't he cute? Anko said, smiling, holding up her little baby. Irika promptly fainted. Meanwhile, over with the Akatsuki, look, Sasori, yeah. Deidara exclaimed, check out my new art, Sasori stared at the thing that Deidara had made. What? Sasori asked flatly. I was inspired by that artful book, yeah, the Ika Ika Paradise. So, you made a woman out of clay? Sasori said, raising an eyebrow, why would you do that? I'm horny, yeah, Deidara said, quite proud of himself. I'm going to bang it. Sasori blinked, and then made a disgusted look, but what about those freakish hands of yours? Are they not enough for you? But they bite, Deidara whined, and it hurts. Sasori grimaced. I did not need to hear that bit of information. Deidara grinned. You do realize that eye has your explosive clay, don't you? Sasori commented, pointing at the clay woman. Deidara shrugged. Sasori sighed. You're going to blow your stupid ass up one day. You know that, don't you? He said with annoyance. Deidara only grinned. I look forward to it. Elsewhere, Haiden, I don't know why you put up with that woman of yours. She annoys the hell out of me, Kakuza grunted. That's why I keep her. Haiden grinned, she enjoys bugging the crap out of you as much as I do. Air. Kakuza grunted, as Tayuya played a screeching note on her new flute right up in his ear. I still don't see why you didn't just kill her months ago. Haiden sighed, she's a woman after my own heart. She's already tried to kill me 27 times in really fun and interesting ways. Tayuya smiled at Haiden and he smiled back at her. She even helps me sacrifice heathens. Haiden said to Kakuzu, what more could I ask for in a woman? Kakuzu grunted, for her not to be pregnant. Haiden shrugged. Tayuya snorted, waddling along, her stomach large and round. Shit. My water broke. That's it. I'm leaving. You deal with it. Kakuzu said, throwing his arms up in the air. Several hours later. What the? Haiden blinked, staring at Tayuya's 3 black-haired babies. And so, it came to pass that where Sasuke failed to revive the Uchiha clan, Tobi with the help of Tayuya succeeded. As for the other Uchiha, Itachi, he, on the other hand, was never heard from again. In the end, the nurses finally toted off an unconscious Kakashi to meet all of his 48 children. And Guy, with a defeated score of 0, then carried out his promise and did in fact strip naked and do cartwheels around Konoha while juggling kittens. Surprisingly, no kittens were harmed. In fact, under Guy's tutelage, the kittens would grow up to be successful mean cats. Also, most of the betting pools Tsunade started were forgotten, save for the record for most babies fathered. It was little to no contest. Kakashi won, receiving a large sum to help him care for his now huge clan. He was definitely going to need all the help he can get. Shikamaru came in a far second, but second nonetheless. Technically in third was Akamaru, because there was no other explanation for how Shizen's pig had a litter of puppies. Version 2, Ending 2. Most of the women had already had their babies. The group all walked towards the large pane of glass down the hall that separated the sterile room lined with aisles of beds each filled with mothers and babies from the outside. Gaara and Kankuro were already there, glancing inside with curious eyes. Niji walked to the front of the group as they arrived at the glass, his eyes searching the room. For a moment, his eyes met Tenten's, but she turned away sheepishly. The child she cradled was bald and tiny, but its little eyes were the widest bright circles. Niji twitched as a very similar pair of eyes appeared to the side of him. Lee. Niji muttered with narrow eyes. Niji! Lee exclaimed in his usual exuberant tone, how are you this fine day? Niji shrugged. YOSH. Lee commented. Hi, Lee. Tenten called out. Hello. Lee waved back. Niji stared at Tenten questioningly. Tenten explained, what can I say? Lee filled me with his youthfulness. YOSH. Niji put his face in his palm, shaking his head. Chuji and Shikamaru then peered through the viewing window. How are you doing, Ino? Chuji asked. Shikamaru waved at his blonde teammate. There was a short pause. Sasuke's my baby daddy. Ino squealed with delight, cuddling her little boy. Shikamaru plugged his ears with his fingers due to the noise. I'm happy for you, Ino. Chuji said slowly. But does she have to be so loud? Shikamaru muttered. Sasuke stared at his offspring through the glass, quite proud of himself. Nearby, Hinata stared at her little girl, sighing. Naruto? She peeped. Huh? He answered from the other side. Sorry. Sorry for what? Naruto scrunched up his face, confused. Sasuke pressed his face against the glass to get a better look at the Hyuga's daughter. Hinata's eyes met his, and he knew. Thanks. Hinata. Sasuke said with sincerity. She smiled back. Naruto scratched his head. Well, that's two new Uchiha in the world, Sasuke thought to himself. But his thoughts were suddenly interrupted. Ino pig, I've got you beat. Came a sudden outburst. Sasuke froze. That voice. It was the pink-haired one. He turned to look at Sakura. His eyes went wide, and he fell to his knees. Two of them sat on her stomach and two were at her breasts, 4 babies, and every one of them had Sakura's signature pink hair. Sasuke twitched on the floor, not even taking the time to notice that unlike his nightmare, they weren't all boys. One was a girl. But, at this moment, this information would not have brought the Uchiha much comfort. Oh, Sasuke. Sakura breathed, they are so beautiful. I've even picked out their names already. Sasuke twitched. It kept running through his head, Uchiha men with long pink hair, Uchiha men with long pink hair, Uchiha this one's Sake, Sakura continued, and this one's Saku, and this one's Sasuke began foaming at the mouth. And this one's Yuke. At that, Sasuke passed out from the stress. Needless to say, Yuke had a long hard life ahead of him. Sakura probably should not have named the children while high on pain medication. Kankuro smiled as Temari waved at him from inside. Temari looked a bit confused though. Why does my baby have blonde hair? She asked. Gaara blinked. Temari, you have blonde hair. Kankuro stated. Oh. Temari said, looking at the little boy with the bright blue eyes. Right. Just then, a male nurse down the hall started yelling someone's name. Kakashi? Kakashi Hatake? Is there a Kakashi around here? The copy nin froze as the nurse drew closer. Kakashi's right here. Iruka called out, pointing to the copy nin who stood right next to him. The Hatake's eye widened slightly as a large bead of sweat poured down his face. The nurse looked down at his clipboard before staring back up at Kakashi. Suddenly, the nurse smiled and exclaimed, Congratulations, it's a boy. Kakashi smiled, and? He asked. The nurse flipped through a few pages, You're a father. Kakashi blinked. But then the nurse turned to the man next to him. You're Iruka, right? He asked. Yes. Congratulations, you've got 3 beautiful girls. Oh, wow, Iruka breathed. And 39 boys. Gak! Iruka gasped, grasping his chest, heaving. Kakashi held the man up so that he wouldn't fall over from the shock. Just then, Guy appeared. Kakashi, Guy said with a thumbs up, I have wondrous news. Kakashi blinked. The spreading of my youthful seeds brought great success. Like the lotus blossom blooming, 2 babies emerged youthfully from Anko's womb. Guy said, illustrating with some posing and hand movements. Onlookers such as Naruto and Kiba made faces of abject horror. And so, my eternal rival, I have fathered 2 youthful youths, Guy said grinning, how many have sprung forth from your loins? Kakashi stared at Guy oddly. 1, he answered. Wow, Kakashi, Guy replied, your sperm must suck. The copy nin blinked. While most of the betting pools Tsunade started were forgotten, the record for most babies fathered did receive a lot of attention. There was no contest. Iruka won by a long shot, likely against his will, not to say he didn't enjoy every minute of it. Sasuke came in a far second, having successfully revived his clan. Though, he had no way of knowing that in another few hundred years, the famous Uchiha clan would live on, known even more for their signature pink hair than their Sharingan eyes. Version 3, Ending 3. Nearly all of the babies had already been born. The group all walked towards the large pane of glass down the hall that separated the sterile room lined with aisles of beds each filled with mothers and babies from the outside. Gaara and Kankuro were already there, glancing inside with curious eyes. Kankuro was surprised at first when Tenten's eyes met his. He waved at her, and she held up a child. "Me?" Kankuro asked, pointing at himself. She nodded. Niji and Lee walked to the front of the group as they arrived at the glass, their eyes searching the room. For a moment, their eyes met Tenten's, but she turned away sheepishly. The child she cradled was neither of theirs. Lee's eyes filled with tears of excitement anyway. Niji simply sighed. Next, Niji decided to see how Hinata was doing. Scanning the room, he soon found her, beaming with joy at the tiny baby she held. Just then, her teammates Kiba and Shino arrived at the viewing window to check on her. "Kiba, Shino," she greeted happily. They waved at her. "Where's Naruto?" she asked. "Naruto?" Kiba asked, turning. "Naruto." "Huh?" Naruto commented, as he was pulled over to the window by Kiba. Naruto blinked. Hinata was smiling at him. "Oh, hey, Hinata," Naruto said, grinning. "Naruto, there's something I must tell you," she exclaimed quickly, blushing, slowly holding up her tiny blonde child. "That's a nice baby you got there, Hinata," Naruto said cluelessly. Hinata giggled. Kiba and Shino stared at Naruto. "What?" Naruto asked. Then he looked again. Oh. Kiba and Shino sighed with relief. "I still don't get it," Naruto commented. Kiba fell backwards, bringing Shino with him. Just then, a male nurse down the hall started yelling someone's name. "Gaara? Is there a Gaara here?" Kankuro waved the man over. "This is Gaara," he pointed. Gaara stared at the man. "Sir," the nurse began, "3 women over in the Umbu compound have requested your presence." Gaara tilted his head curiously, before finally nodding and going off to see his offspring. A few minutes later, the man asked, "Is there?" The man looked at the clipboard again. "A guy, a Kakashi, and an Iruka-sensei here?" "Kakashi's right over there," Asuma said to the man. The copy Nin turned. "Congratulations, there are 13 women on this list who claim you as the father of their children." Kakashi staggered, waving his arms, but Guy pushed him upright once again. Kakashi's sweat dropped, mumbling to himself, "How am I going to feed 13 children?" "What about me?" Guy said, jumping about. "Well, sir, according to this you've got 14 "In your face, Kakashi!" Guy screamed, interrupting the nurse. Kakashi shrugged, before going off to see the mothers of his children. "Behold the power of youth!" The nurse backed away slowly. Just then, there were 2 screams that echoed throughout the ward. "Sakura! Ino! Sakura, what could have happened?" "I don't know, Ino. Why is my baby blonde?" "You're blonde, you stupid Ino pig." "Not this shade of blonde." "Wait, mine's the same." Sakura pondered. "Sasuke! We need you!" Sasuke walked up to the glass. "What is it?" "Do you have any blonde relatives?" Sakura asked hopefully. "No," Sasuke said flatly. But Ino began. But Sakura stuttered, "This isn't possible." "What do you mean?" Sasuke asked. "We you," as Ino said, "we with you through the window." "What window?" Sasuke asked. Ino and Sakura blinked. "Sakura, what's going on?" Naruto asked. Our children Sakura and Ino began simultaneously. Naruto blinked, before smiling sheepishly. "I think I can explain." "What?" "It was me in the window, not Sasuke." Naruto explained. "What?" "I hinged into Sasuke's form and then went to find you." "What?" "It was me that I guess you couldn't tell since it was dark and all," Naruto said, grinning at the memory. "What?" Later that day, Kakashi met up with Guy once again. Kakashi nonchalantly informed Guy that Anko had a child by Kakashi, bringing their totals to a tie of 14 and 14. Guy wigged out at this bit of information for quite a while, but Kakashi just wandered off, grinning under his mask. Elsewhere, a nurse over in the Umbu ward was very confused as to why 22 of the women refused to reveal the name of the father of their children all with the same dark hair. They said that they wouldn't be able to track him down anyway, so it was pointless. All the betting pools that Tsunade started fell apart, due to the true winner never being located. Elsewhere, a certain fishy man awoke elated as he saw the face of his long-lost partner. "Itachi!" Kisame exclaimed, "Where have you been?" "I was abducted by a large number of horny females." Kisame said, mesmerized. "I revived my clan." Itachi said flatly. "I thought you hated the Uchiha clan," Kisame said cautiously. Itachi stared up into the sky. "I shall start the clan over," Itachi continued. "They will no longer be called the Uchiha. I shall call them the Itachi clan." Kisame blinked. "So does that mean I should call you Itachi now?" Itachi stared at his Akatsuki partner. "No, Kisame. That would be silly. If there had been a winner, it would have been Itachi, who by some sort of irony revived the Uchiha clan, a task that Sasuke managed to fail at miserably. Second place would have been a tie for Kakashi and Guy. But, most surprisingly perhaps, was Naruto, who made a come-from-behind victory in third. Chapter 31, Final Epilogue. A whole year had passed since it had all started. It was hard to believe. At the one-year anniversary of Tsunade's decree of the Konoha mating frenzy, Jiraiya had a special book signing at the local adult bookstore. The occasion was also a celebration of the release of his brand new volume in his adult novel series, Ika Ika. The new volume was entitled Ika Ika Frenzy. As part of the celebration of the successful completion of the Hokage's 3-month plan, she temporarily lifted the age ban on the adult books, including Jiraiya's newest. Later, as many of the shinobi of Konoha began to read the new Ika Ika, they noticed something oddly familiar about the characters, and they were getting a sense of déjà vu as the events of the book unfolded. During that 3-month time, Jiraiya had done a lot of research on his fellow ninja. This led to Jiraiya getting many odd looks from his readers. But at least it got him a thumbs up from a giddy Kakashi. Tsunade laughed at it all as she stood next to Jiraiya. She was surprisingly pregnant considering her previously thought state of menopause, but she would wait and tell him later. Now, she thought, it would only start all over again, for what she had neglected to tell them all was that the 3-month plan was really 3 years. The end.
Go support me on Patreon for more fanfiction that includes adult content as well. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel. Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you.